Okay, it is 1800 hours. I'm going to call this workshop to order, and the Pledge of Allegiance will be led by Councilman Langerman. Please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Hoorah. Madam Jones,
Mayor Medina,
present.
Deputy Mayor Jaffe,
Present.
Councilman Johnson is by phone. Councilman Johnson. Councilman Langevin.
Present.
I'm sorry, Councilman Hammer.
Here.
Mr. Morton.
Present.
Ms. Smith. Here.
Okay, thank you, Madam Jones. Our number one item on the business, I'll defer to Mr. Morton.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor, City Council. I think our first item tonight is going to be the presentation of the annual consolidated financial report. And we have our consultant, Eddie Castaneda, here to do that.
Good afternoon, Council. How are you? My name is Eddie Castaneda. I'm a senior manager on the audit and engagement of the city of Palm Bay. My firm is Forbes Mazars, previously MSL, as you may or may not know. But I'm here to present the results of the annual audit. Sir, click there. When it vibrates, okay. We are required. The audit was issued back on May 29th as part, and that should have been delivered to you, as well as a communication letter that we are required as external auditors to communicate those charged with governance, which is the city council, certain required communications. It's all detailed in the letter, but I'll just go over it very briefly, high level here, and let me know if you have any questions. We're required to, our auditor's responsibility is to conduct the audit in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles, as well as generally accepting government auditing standards, which we have done. Management's responsibility is to be forthcoming and forthright, give us access to any information that we require or ask, and not limit our scope. And I'm happy to say that they have done that. There's been no disagreements with management, and it's been a healthy working relationship. And on that note, I just want to give a special thanks to Larry, Ruth, and Shane over there. A lot of work goes into producing this document, and it's tireless hours, and no one likes dealing with auditors, trust me. So thank you. There was no significant audit adjustments in the financial statements, and there was no significant issues discussed with management as well. Service and deliverables, we issue 5 separate independent accountants reports. The first one being the main one, which is the independent accountants report, where we say the opinion is an unmodified opinion. That is the quote clean opinion, which basically states that everything in the financial statements is materially correct. The second report that we issue is your single audit report, where we do an audit on major federal programs or state projects. There's a calculation as to which, and I'll show you which ones we audited this year on the next slide. There was no issues there, no findings there. The third.
Carry on, sir.
Okay. The third one is an internal control over financial reporting. As governmental auditors, we're required to evaluate our auditees' internal control structure, and we're happy to say that there was no issues found in the city's internal control structure. The two major programs that we audited this year were the assistant listing number 21027, which is commonly referred to as ARPA, or the COVID-19 grant program. And then the second was a state project, which was a state program, the wastewater treatment facility construction, and we've audited that, and that one was approximately $8 million, and the COVID-19 grant was $5 million. No issues found in testing those two programs. The fourth letter that we issue is the management letter. This is just a Florida Auditor General required letter that stipulates that they want us to look at certain things in accordance with Florida statutes. It's detailed in that letter, but we're happy to say that there was no issues found there, as well as an examination report. And this is just another Florida Auditor General requirement, that they want us to look at each auditee's compliance with their investment policy in accordance with Florida statutes, and we've done that examination, and the city is in the city appears to be in compliance with that Florida statute. No issues known there. And then I'll go quickly some high-level oversight on both your governmental activities and your business type activities. The last two lines there I think are probably the most useful. The unrestricted net position as a total percent of your expenses. This is just a percent of your fund balance. How much of that percentage would cover the upcoming expenditures in the year. You will see in the governmental activities that is a negative number, but that is mostly related to the city's net pension liability and OPEB liability. That brings down your fund balance, but that's not an actual liability that the city is going to have to pay. This is just an accounting, an accounting standard that requires to estimate that liability and put it on your books. General fund, high level, same. The last two lines are kind of the more interesting ones, where you'll see in your general fund you have approximately 37% worth of fund balance, of unassigned fund balance, as a percent of your total expenditures, and the net change in the fund balance in the current year was approximately $4 million. Budget to actual, you'll see that the city did perform, the general fund did perform well. Budget to actual, it was approximately $26 million positive from the original budget. And then lastly, your utility funds it appears very healthy. Keep increasing that fund balance year to year. As we see that, right, your operating income hovers around $11 to $12 million, and your total net position being approximately $240 million. And that's pretty healthy as far as Florida municipalities go. So if any council member had any questions or concerns, or
Council, any questions? Carry on.
that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone in the audience wish to speak? Carry on, Mr. Morton. Doesn't say.
Thank you. I wanted to give some introductory remarks tonight before we go into the presentation. First of all, just want to give my thanks. Very proud of staff, the way they've responded to a brand new budget process, but also the way they've responded to a whole new set of questions that have been posed to them, not only by you as council members, but also by me as a new city manager. And I'll start by saying in the city of Palm Bay, I think we all recognize, staff recognizes the importance of being fiscally responsible and making the most of every taxpayer dollar. However, while deferring certain purchases or maintenance projects sometimes appears to save money in the short term, our reality, and as staff, is that we see these delays often lead to significantly higher costs and more expenses to our community. Whether it's aging infrastructure, vehicles, equipment, or facility upkeep, postponing necessary investments increases the risk of breakdowns, emergency repairs, and even total replacements. And these unplanned costs are almost always more expensive than proactive maintenance, scheduled upgrades, or scheduled replacements. For us right now, we're seeing some of that greater financial burden that is translating to today, but will also continue to grow and compound into the future. I think our presentation is beginning to answer some of council's questions, that we take a forward-looking approach by addressing needs before they escalate, to preserve the quality of services, to shore up and make sure our public safety is the best that it can be. And I think also there's a call that we need to partner with the community to demonstrate strong stewardship of public resources and deliver on long-term public value. That takes resources to do that. Just for a couple examples of what I talk about in pragmatic financial stewardship, it wasn't that long ago when you heard about a public works tractor they sought to replace, and I believe the initial purchase was $47,000. So far to date, that tractor has experienced $147,000 in repairs. We have a fire engine that is just about ready to qualify for an antique license plate in the state of Florida. Fire engine 5151 is 25 years of age. We have two that are not far behind. Engine 5182 and 5188 respectively are more than 20 years old. And we also need to replace a heavy rescue vehicle. This is important not just for delivering priority public safety and services to our community, it also has other direct impacts, like directly impacting our ISO rating, which will translate into higher costs for our homeowners and businesses to pay for insurance. Our police vehicles and equipment, I know it's better than it has been, and you guys have made significant strides, but that work is not finished, and we don't want to risk compromise safety or ability to respond to the ever-increasing demands we see law enforcement being put under in this day and age. Our buildings, our facilities, more than half of our buildings are more than 25 years of age on a square foot basis. Some of our most beloved buildings are more than 45 years of age, placing them all, the 25 to 45 year range and older, into critical necessity for maintenance and critical state of potential advanced failure. Those include Fire Station 2, Captain's House, and the Tony Rosa Community Center. For me and staff, as we approach budget, we took this as a call to proactive financial stewardship, and hopefully this message will communicate tonight to serve to communicate to our community the real needs that we have moving forward to keep Palm Bay great, to keep us safe, to keep us moving in the right direction, and ultimately the pain sometimes of spending money now, but the cost savings that we realize in the future. And with that, I think we're ready for Angelica to kick off the meat of the budget presentation and the numbers.
Good evening. My name is Jessica Henchman. I'm the Budget Program Administrator for the City of Palm Bay. Tonight, myself and Shane Bird, our Budget Analyst, and Angelica Collins, our Assistant Finance Director, are going to present the first portion of tonight's events. So we always kick it off with our Distinguished Budget Award. For over 3 decades, the city has prided itself on its budget development, and this year being a transition year, we're continuing that hard work and excellence. Tonight, we're going to go over our FY25 accomplishments with the budget. You'll also get your general fund financial overview. We'll do a recap of the FY26 budget requests, everybody's favorite, the taxable values and millage rates, and then we'll take your questions at the end. So the first big kickoff is what have we accomplished in FY25 between our goals and what we were able to do throughout the year. So our biggest thing was 35 additional public safety full-time positions. You had 18 in the police department and 17 in fire. Additionally, we did over $60 million in capital investments. The majority of that was in the utility fund, but throughout the year, through budget amendments, we did a lot of investment into capital outlay, especially for your police vehicles. For all of the department's mid-year requests, you saw vehicles and parks and facilities, as well as utilities. A big part of this year on our capital asset management side has been trying to trim down the number of projects we have citywide. We had a growing number of projects that from inception have just been sitting on the shelves. There's been no activity, but that money has been tied up. So with Sean Spillers, who is our capital asset administrator, he's been working with departments, and we've had a great reduction of closing projects that are no longer necessary or feasible and freeing that money up for our current immediate needs. In fact, on the most recent budget amendment, for the first time this year, you saw the net impact to the general fund was a return of money from project closures that happened in that quarter. And then last but not least, we did $3.25 million towards our commitment to the road maintenance program.
Alrighty, as Jessica introduced me, my name is Shane Bird. I'm the budget analyst here in the finance department, handling revenues tonight. So to discuss that, we've got a large table here, lots of data, but really what we want to hone in on is the property taxes for the preliminary budget. Now just note that that number and that figure is based on the 3% cap rate of 6.3658. So just keeping that in mind. And then another number that jumps out is that fund balance usage there. So in FY25, you'll note a one-time use of that $29 million, and then we've tentatively plugged in $13.5 million in for the preliminary budget of FY26, and that is essentially your savings account used to help balance out the budget against expenses, because of course we adopt a balanced budget, revenues match expense. So just kind of going into this really gives you that breakdown of the revenues for the general fund. Just to note, a couple of interesting trends is there was that FY23 post-COVID rebound of 16%, just kind of showing that the city of Palm Bay was recovering from the pandemic. And then there was an amended spike of 24% of that $29.2 million use of non-recurring fund balance usage. So just kind of noting, overall, the city's revenues are comprised of about 90% of recurring revenues, and then that 10% of fund balance is typically one-time use, or you try to keep it to one-time use. And then we get into the composition of those revenues. You'll note the large dollar amount there, or the large percentage amount there, is that 45% of property taxes, followed by your intergovernmental items, utility taxes, charges for service, and then again, that 10% of fund balance. As I said, 90% or so of the city's revenues are recurring. So that's, ideally what you want to see. So getting into the composition and kind of the history breakdown of property taxes, just to note, you'll see that there's a 66% increase since FY22, but again, that's not necessarily tied to a tax rate increase. That has to do with the growing tax base here in the city of Palm Bay. So of course, new homes get developed, businesses get developed, the need for services increase. You'll have a need for capital improvements for roads, you'll need public safety needs, whether it's fire, police, and all that's tied to this large portion of our property taxes. It's a huge component of the city's revenues. And then the next remaining top four revenues, again, as highlighted, that intergovernmental, utility taxes, charges for service, and franchise fees. Those kind of make up the other stable revenue sources that the city of Palm Bay has. And this just gives you kind of a historic track. You'll note that most of the revenues are relatively flat and stable, kind of like we saw with property taxes where it's a gradual increase, but relatively stable revenues. Now, this slide specifically gives you kind of the breakdown of that net $16.97 million difference from the $123 million amended budget to the proposed $140 million budget. This just gives you that kind of overall breakdown, what makes up that difference. So you'll see there's increase of $5 million for property taxes, but then you'll see a decrease in transfers. So all that kind of comprised together gets you that new preliminary budget. Okay, and then this table here, I find it interesting because it's a good way to really look at the city's overall revenues for general fund and kind of classify them based on what their percentage makeup of the overall total revenues are, and then their volatility and what drives that, or their overall scoring. So we do 1 through 5, and then ideally 1 is more stable, 5 is more volatile. You preferably would like to have more stable revenues that you can depend on and count on and grow. And this table essentially breaks that down. And then this next chart, it's a little hard to read, it looks like, but really what this is just showing you is a visual version of that table. So the items that are further to the left and higher up are comprised of your majority revenues and your more stable revenues. So like we see here with property taxes, it's at 45%, and it makes up the vast majority of our most stable revenues, followed by the Class 2 items, which are like your utility taxes, charges for services, and franchise fees. And then, of course, as we get further to the right, those are revenues you can't necessarily depend on for consistency, but they are still recurring revenues. We just really, really want to hone in on the property taxes figure and some of these number 2 items. And that covers our revenues. Did you want to cover expenditures? Okay.
Good evening, Angelica Collins, Assistant Finance Director for the City of Palm Bay. So I'll go ahead and take over the expenditure side in the general fund, and then we'll go into your property taxes specifically. So what this table is showing you is still a historical backdating to fiscal year 2022, including your fiscal year 2026 preliminary budget. Based on the general fund departments. So what you won't see here is utilities or building. Obviously, those are enterprise funds, so they're enterprise funds departments, so they are not listed in here. And public works, while not a primarily in the general fund, they also have enterprise funds, so some of their spending is allocated in different area. So what we are looking at, how we've kind of built this budget is this is the base budget based on operating maximums for the departments. So they're essentially allocated the current year, fiscal year approved budget, and then we take out any one-time expenses. It does include already any allocations, for example, administrative service costs or fleet service charges, risk liability insurance. So all that's already calculated and included. It also includes debt transfers going out which our finance director will cover a little bit more detail in the later presentation. What it does not include is any high priority additional requests for the upcoming year or any other requests. So we'll go kind of break down into high priority, which are contractual obligations, contract increases, any new contracts that are added, so things that have to be paid but that we have not had in the current budget already, that is also not included. So this is essentially as is moving forward without any additional requests already built in. So that would sort of be the next phase after today that we're moving into. The next chart looks at the same data, just on the type. So we break it down by personnel, operating, capital, debt service. I always break out the transfers for road maintenance. Our goal is to get up to $4 million annually I'm sorry. I'm operating the laptop and this at the same time. So we're looking at it broken down by the type. Personnel, obviously, out of that 135 million makes up the majority of what you're paying for. So roughly about $92.3 million is personnel service costs. So that includes salaries, benefits, any ad pays that essentially have to be paid. That will already include any type of contractual union contract increases, a cost of living for the general employees. And again, road transfer, we are hoping to have a goal of $4 million a year, but I've allocated an additional 3.25, again, keeping that stable. And then our local option gas tax that is also sent out to go ahead and focus on those specific road type of projects. So it's giving you the same number, just looking at it different. It's just really pointing that in the general fund, the majority of the revenue that comes in really does support the personnel staff that operates, with public safety obviously being our largest component of that 92 million. Then what we do is we kind of look at fiscal year 24. So fiscal year 24 has closed out. It's been audited, so our auditors came and they've done their job. And so we kind of look at how we ended the year from our actual budget versus the actuals that have come in. So we kind of do a net. We look at revenues, then the expenditures based on personnel service, operating capital, debt service, and all that. So your net when you're looking at it was 4.7 million. Please remember that a lot of the operating expenditures, and specifically also the capital expenditure projects, while they are budgeted, a lot of them may not be expensed in that year and they roll forward to the following year. So that is when Shane earlier was talking about that 29 million and that 13 million that we've already built in for the next fiscal year's budget. That is to support those costs that include any type of purchase orders or capital projects that are already approved, but they just haven't been spent yet just because of the accounting periods, fiscal years kind of crossing over. So really of the total 22.6 million in operating and capital combined, 18.4 actually rolled to the current fiscal year in 25 because those items were unspent. And as Jessica mentioned earlier, we did sort of an analysis and a thorough review of any projects that have kind of rolled and that were on the books, but that were just no longer feasible or no longer moving ahead with those. So those are currently going through your review through that budget amendment where we are closing them and we're trying to really allocate that funding or free it up for some other asks. Again, of the 4.9 million in personnel savings, the largest savings you will see in our police department, approximately 57% of the total personnel service savings in the general fund are from the police department. What that means is that a position is budgeted for the full year, meaning we usually budget at the minimum salary, we budget for health insurance, workers' comp, and all of that, and that position is just not filled. So that's that vacancy. So there's certain costs associated. If you don't have a position to be paid, then obviously your salary budget doesn't go anywhere just because it stays stagnant because there's no expenses hitting against it. Another thing we do is we kind of look at the current year that we're in and we try to estimate what we're going to look like at the end of the year. I always highlight that this is just an estimate. The process that we go through, each department does their own year-end estimates. So we do train individuals, but again, there's a lot, it's done in the middle of the year. So when you're thinking 6 months out of the year, there's staffing turnover. So these are truly only estimates where at that time when they're doing them, they may just not know what the true costs would be at the end of the year. So I always kind of approach these with caution. So next year when we come back, that closeout for 25, when the audit actually happens, may look pretty differently, but we still like to look at it just to kind of get an idea. So what we're looking at is with revenues kind of staying pretty stagnant, meaning that what we're kind of projecting is what we're projecting to actually receive. On the expenditure side, you'll actually, what initially you would think that there's a large savings, that we're saying, yes, we have $152 million in budget towards operating, capital, debt service, anything like that, but we may only spend $12.4 million. So you initially may think, oh, we have those $12.5 million in savings. You actually don't, because remember I mentioned that a lot of the expenses associated to POs and projects, while they're fully budgeted, they do have to roll to next year. We have done that process already, where we're currently actually estimating a higher amount that needed to roll forward. So in a sense, your expenditures are actually increasing, which costs are increasing. So that's actually naturally what we're kind of seeing. Where currently into 26, we're estimating $13.5 million in unspent funds tied to purchase orders and projects that have to roll forward. So all in all, when you take everything into consideration, your net of, if this is truly a perfect number, we're actually about $987,900 in a deficit. So all in all, we're looking at washing out. But again, I always stress that these are simply just estimates. But it's still a good exercise to go through. All right, so one item that I had done for our city manager was really look at, now that we're kind of going into the realm of starting with our millage rates. So as Shane mentioned earlier, currently our revenues that we have estimated are on the 3% cap. That is historically just the process that we've gone through. But what we wanted to also do is kind of look at what are the options, right? 3% cap rate, there's always the talks about going to the rollback rate, and what if we were to maintain the current rate that we're at? So essentially moving into next year where you're not increasing your tax rate, but you're staying the same. So when we're looking at 2026 preliminary budget, so we're talking about nothing has been approved yet. So all the budget requests, all the priorities, everything is on hold at the moment, so we're looking at just as revenues and as moving forward as is. If you were moving to the 3% cap rate, and I will put it out there before I get into the next section. For many years, I have made a comment that if you continue to adopt the 3% cap rate, you will go below rollback. You are officially below rollback. And I'll go into that a little bit in how that happened. But yes, for fiscal year 2026, your 3% cap is officially below the rollback rate. So as I'm kind of moving through my slides, I'm starting with your 3% cap, then giving you the rollback, and then giving you the current, just because I like to go in that numbers sequentially. So if we were to go ahead and move into next year at the 3% cap, which is a rate of 6.3658, based on revenues and expenditures, you're looking at new net revenue of about $4.6 million. So if we're going to continue in just in that small table at the top, if you were to go to the rollback rate, which is 6.4071, you're looking at new net revenue of about $5 million, so roughly about $400,000 more. If you were to maintain the current rate, which is 6.7339, your new net revenue would be about $8.3 million. So that is if we were not to look at using any type of fund balance. So it is essentially just of how moving forward, we're just going to use the new net revenue and nothing else. So then what we're trying to do for next year, instead of consistently coming to council with budget amendment requests and using fund balance, we are planning or hoping to actually build that into the budget. It's a same method of budgeting. As long as we balance our budget, revenues and expenditures to adopt the budget, we can already use known fund balance from fiscal year 24, which has been audited, where that's truly available. We would like to use that to already offset the large number of requests that we have. Benefit, it reduces departments coming to you during the fiscal year, reduces budget amendments, and we truly have a full budget that reflects savings that we have that we're putting towards the large needs that Jessica's going to talk about in a little bit. So that's sort of the second section at the bottom. So what we do is we already calculate your reserves at the 2 months. So I calculate that amount already. So you essentially have that. You have to set that aside. Per the policy, you cannot touch that. We also talk about our stabilization fund. So that's set aside. Council has always done that 4%. That is just that additional $2.3 million that you're setting aside, usually for hurricane season. Just you're set aside for emergencies. And then we also talked about, with going back to the 2-month policy of the reserves, of actually building up and setting aside an additional $2.5 million. So I've built that all into my calculations, looking at new revenue that you're getting in based on your tax rate, and then looking at that surplus based on what we've calculated for 24. So we're looking at your total available funding for 2026 to fund the requests that we are about to present to you. So ideally, what you're looking at is at the 3% cap rate between total new money, new surplus that you have, plus the fund balance we're trying to use, you are able to spend approximately $11.8 million. If you go to the rollback rate, it goes to $12.3 million. And if you are maintaining the current rate and adopting that in the month of September, we are looking at $15.5 million that we want to go ahead and fund the requests that come. So if we move into the following year with maintaining the current rate, we'll start with spending the $8.3 million of the new revenue, and then we'll go ahead and add that additional $7.2 million of savings that have already been audited in the fiscal year 24 that we have available, that undesignated fund balance that departments frequently come to you. So that helps us build a better budget going forward, and we're able to already look at funding a larger amount of needs, especially our high priority ones, which truly we have to fund those. Those are required that we need to pay.
So now we're going to the FY26 funding requests. We have condensed this from the last meeting that you all saw, and we also have a few more new requests to go over that have come up from your feedback from the last workshop. So overall, between all funds, we had over $100 million in requests. The largest proportion, at 36%, came from the general fund, 28% was from the Go Roads program, and then your 15% started with one of the utilities funds. The biggest part of this overall is across all funds, 76% of the requests are related to capital needs, either capital projects or capital outlay needs. Within your general fund, the $36 million in requests, your largest request portions came from parks and facilities and from fire. Between all of the general fund departments, your needs were pretty much split between capital outlay and operating, with just a small impact of requests for projects. I like to call this my other category. These are our smaller departments, so I'm highlighting them first with all of their requests. With recreation, they have one priority one request, which is their AUE staffing. That's your lifeguards for the pool and all of your other summer and seasonal staffing. This is a request that's been approved for them before, but it was not marked as recurring. So they have to come back this year to ask for the funding again, but it is something that we're trying to add into their budget moving forward every year. While the initial request is $327,000, they do bring in revenue that offsets part of this request. So at the bottom, you'll see the department is anticipating about $175,000 in revenue related to those programs. So really the net impact to the general fund would be about $153,000. Recreation is also asking for some additional operating increased needs, things like chemicals and gym equipment and some vehicle wraps for their promotional vehicles and vans for their camps that they use. The next department that we'll highlight is the legislative department. Mr. Mayor, your council audience chairs have now been up there. The request is about $50,000 for those. You have $100,000 for the broadcast system, and then they are looking to do a reclass of an admin secretary position that has a minor impact. Human Resources also only has one request. They're looking for recruitment supplies for a total of $5,000. Next is our Fire Rescue Department. Overall, they had $13.2 million in requests. The largest portion, of course, is for the fire trucks, $11 million in total for capital. We have 3 replacement engines that Mr. Morton has already talked about, but they're also looking for a new heavy rescue for their TRT team and 2 new Quints. A big proportion of their priority 1 requests are related to their contract. In year 2 of the contract, they have stipulations for certain equipment and uniforms that are mandated to be provided to the personnel. So that is a big chunk of the operating requests related to their priority 1 items. We did want to highlight that with some of these items, there's going to be a continual budget impact for them in terms of the solo paramedic. So they have a request to fund the Academy for Solo Paramedic, but once those personnel achieve that status, there is a $12,500 ad pay incentive per position for those. So moving forward, if the first group, which is 25 firefighters, becomes solo paramedics on the personnel side, you'll see an impact of $312,000 annually for those positions on top of the cost of the academy. Additionally, as we add more paramedics and as we add more equipment like the LifePak 360s and the Lucas machines, that comes with oversight from our medical director. And they have been notified already this year that because of these increases, the costs for those services are going to go up starting next year and continue to go up every year forward. For our police department, there are some new items on this that you didn't see at the last workshop. Overall, their total request for out of the general fund is $2.7 million. Again, they have high priority items. They're Axon contracts. They're going to need money to continue operating for the body cams and taser program. And overall this year, they had 3 total vehicle loss from crashes and accidents. So we are looking to replace those cars so there's no loss in service for those personnel. One item that is new that came from the last workshop, there was discussion about potentially building out the 3rd floor of Building E that came up with the request from procurement for a remodel. Instead of putting money towards the remodel, it was discussed and to look into whether we could build out the 3rd floor. Part of the trickle down of that move would be potentially opening up additional space for the police department in Building B. And with the police department moving over, there are CJIS requirements that are going to involve hardening that building. So there is a new project request related to that hardening. The estimates are on the low end about $150,000, on the high end to $220,000. So that is a new request that you're seeing here tonight. In capital outlay requests, they always have vehicle replacement needs. So on top of the 3 total lost vehicles, they are looking to replace 21 replacement vehicles and the mower for their police range, as well as adding a new Teradyne for their SWAT team. Something else that is new that came is talking about the new police headquarters. They are confident in moving forward in FY26 with the design and pre-engineering phase of that. So they are going to be coming back to you with a impact fee request for that first phase of that project. And right now that estimate is at $370,000. Parks and Facilities is the next department, and they were our largest department with requests at just under $15 million. They do have a couple high priority requests that are related to onboarding our new buildings. Building E and Station 7 are anticipated to be opening next year, so you do have costs associated with that. And they're also seeing increased janitorial needs citywide, primarily at some of our facilities that the public frequently uses or uses as rentals. Something that's unique with Parks and Facilities, they take in all of the requests for the citywide maintenance needs from all of the departments. So a big chunk of their requests, about $8.5 million, come from needs that some of the departments themselves have identified, whether it's renovations within their departments, AC replacements or repairs. So that's a large portion of the request that you see for Parks and Facilities. They also have $1 million in capital outlay requests related to their vehicles, And at the last workshop, you heard Mr. Miner speak about all of the new projects that they would like to do to improve the lighting at their parks, as well as get some sunshades over their playgrounds. They also will be coming back to you with an impact fee request related to their new Parks and Facilities Administration building for $2.37 million out of Parks impact fees. They are looking to completely build that start to finish a building for their staff. Our IT department has a total just under $1.3 million for their request next year. They too have two high priority items. One is related to our ERP system, which will help improve accountability across multiple functions here in the city, from our financial functions to our procurement functions and also our personnel. And then you also have the Edge Switch upgrades, which they explained last week has to do with improving our cybersecurity, and it is something that came from some of our operational audits. On top of those two, they have their continuing security camera and access control programs, the next phase they're asking for funding for. And then the last request was the GPS in city vehicles. If you recall, that was an initiative that started under Mr. Morgan that he asked them to look into research and bring forward as an option for FY26. Next is our Public Works. Now, again, this is only the general fund portion of Public Works. They're at about $3.5 million for their request. They do have a couple high priority requests related to FP&L increases and mowing contracted services. Outside of that, they have $2.5 million in capital outlay requests for vehicle and replacements. They are looking to do a little over $300,000 in respans around the city. And then on top of that, they have about $350,000 for some other needs, ranging from engineering and tree trimming services, as well as safety and equipment increases. For all of our other funds, all the previous ones were all general fund. This is your slide in relation to everything else. Again, these funds for the building, utilities, stormwater, and your roads, you see a heavier impact with projects. So they do account for 80% of the requests in these funds. And most of this is aimed at improvements to your utilities infrastructure at both the South Regional and North Regional facilities. You're seeing projects for lift station, rehabs, and force main repairs. On the road maintenance, you're seeing road maintenance enhancements, and you're through GoPro bonds as well. But then they also have $2 million that they're dedicating towards sidewalks throughout the city. Within stormwater, their focus is on 3 new projects for culvert repairs around the city.
All right, so now we are, what I think may be the most important section of the night. I am going to talk about our taxable values and our millage rates, and the goal after this presentation, hopefully by the end of the night, is for council to officially approve their proposed millage rates and adopt or agree on the 2 public hearing dates. So that is the true sort of end goal as of today. And in addition to that, next week in your regular council meeting, you will see the official agenda memo from myself through our finance director coming to you to officially approve our proposed rate and those 2 public hearing dates. But that's truly like everything that we've talked about as far as funding and the needs is driven, or the majority of it is driven by the proposed rates that you will be setting for the upcoming year. So the first slide in this section of the presentation, I always give you a 10-year history of our taxable value for the city. So 2025, don't think of, I know we're preparing for 2026, but what it is really taxing calendar year of 2025. So for the upcoming fiscal year, you're looking at a current gross taxable value of approximately $10.4 million. Which includes the current taxable value of 9.8, and then really what has been driving really a lot of the revenue increase, even at staying at the 3% cap, is the new taxable value, or what we often call that new construction. So new construction is pivotal if you are maintaining that 3% cap, mainly because new construction is exempt from the 3% cap for the first calendar year. So technically, the more taxable, new taxable value you have hitting the city's gross taxable value, that is benefiting if you're staying at the 3% cap. Over the past 5 years, I have seen a significant growth. Unfortunately, for this tax year that we are calculating, you are beginning to see that decline, which has been something that we've also kind of projected that it is slowing down. So we are still adding $618 million of new construction or new taxable value to the actual total tax base, but it is slowing with approximately an $80 million reduction from the previous year. So just be mindful, so that I do put that out there, so that helps kind of project to see where it's going. Every year you will see your total gross taxable value increase, because as I said, is that new taxable value after that first year will just become part of your current taxable value that is reflected or is against that 3% cap. One of my favorite slides that I put together, I give you a 20-year history of what our taxable value has been and what revenues we're kind of generating. So as you see, I kind of take it back to 2006, and you saw that in 2008, we kind of hit that high, and then that's where the crash kind of happened. So you saw how much we lost in actual home property valuations, which really significantly decreased our revenues that we're able to bring in. Started increasing back maybe about 10, 12 years ago again. And then I started sort of tracking our actual adopted rate against when the 3% cap was actually put in the charter, which was in 2018. So the dark gray line is the adopted tax rates for that particular year. The orange line is your 3% cap. Of course, when you're adopting the 3% cap, they do meet. So you'll kind of see that orange line continue. So you'll see the fluctuations, and you'll see still our revenues are increasing, yes, because we've kind of benefited from that growth of that new taxable value. This year, I have chosen to add the rollback rate. As you see, for historically, what I've always kind of predicted is that as you're continuing to adopt that 3% cap rate, I've mentioned is eventually you will get below rollback. So that rate is going to continue driving down until that rollback rate, which in layman's terms, a rollback rate means that you're technically not increasing someone's taxes if their property taxes were to remain the same. Right? So that means that we're not increasing taxes, but with property valuations going up, there naturally will still be a property tax increase on that homeowner. But that is essentially what the rollback is. And I know that sometimes for cities, that is the goal, is to get to that rollback. I have a good rapport with all the taxing authorities in the county. It is not common for a city that is projectively still growing to be below rollback, but I just wanted to add that line to show you that we are officially, for this upcoming fiscal year, your 3% cap rate has been pushed below that rollback rate. So you're actually reducing for the upcoming fiscal year. It's just a good visual. All right, so the next two slides, what I try to do is sort of put everything together and tell you, if you're adopting this rate, this is how much revenue you would be generating based on the taxable value that we have in the city applied against that rate, and giving you some comparables and also comparing it to the current year. So it kind of gives you a whole overview of what these rates kind of do. So we start out with the fiscal year 2025 current information. Our current rate is 6.7339, and for fiscal year 25, that projected revenue is roughly about $57.9 million. So what if we were to go into 2026, maintaining that current rate? So if you were to go ahead and propose that rate this evening and move through the month of September with actually adopting that rate, so you're not increasing your property tax rate, you are maintaining what you have this year. You're looking at an increased revenue up to $67.2 million. So you're looking at an additional $9.4 million in ad valorem taxation or property taxation compared to this current year. So imagine that is what the property value increase is doing for your revenues. You're not increasing your tax rate, but your ad valorem revenue that you are generating is increasing by that net $9.4 million just because of the growth the city is experiencing. Then there's some other options. I always kind of give a range. I'm going to start with a rollback rate first because that you're officially below rollback, so I had to switch that around a little bit. So with that rollback rate of 6.4071, your ad valorem taxation revenue would roughly be about $63.9 million, which is a $6 million increase from the current year. And then if you were to adopt the 3% cap of the 6.3658, that would be anticipated revenue of $63.5 million, so that'd be about $5.6 million just in new revenue from the ad valorem taxation. It also gives you the percentages. So as you see, even though we say the rollback rate, you're not increasing those taxes, it's still for the city a 10.5% increase, just because you do have higher property valuations and you do have an increased amount of properties and taxable value that you have on the roll. The new construction from this current year, which I highlighted in the previous slide of this $691 million, for 25, that was exempt for the 3% cap, and for 26, this is now subjected to the 3% cap. So that's what you kind of see is that as that revenue or as that new taxable value starts decreasing, your total revenue is also, that new net revenue is also going to start decreasing just because they're mirroring each other. So for fiscal year 26, the new construction of the $619 million will be exempt from the 3% cap. So that's why that initial ad valorem revenue is higher, just because those don't fall under that cap rate. But then remember, as we come back for 27, that $619 million will again be subjected to the cap regulations. The next slide looks at it slightly different, but it's still the same information. It mirrors that if you were to go ahead and maintain the 6.7339, as I mentioned in the previous slide, you're looking at an additional $9.4 million in just new ad valorem taxation increase from the current fiscal year. And then it kind of moves over and it compares as you're deviating from that rate, from that adopted rate from this year, and how you're deviating from the 3% cap. So essentially, you kind of can jump down to the 3% cap rate of that 6.3658. You're looking at an increase of revenue from the current year of that $5.6 million, as I mentioned earlier. But that also is a reduction in $3.6 million from maintaining that cap. So that is your delta, right? So that's the delta that you're looking at, that if you were to make that choice of maintaining the 6.7339 or going to your 3% cap. So that would be a loss essentially of roughly about $3.7 million that you would not be able to generate to put towards requests for next year. A lot of times I do hear people say, our council people and our government, they can just raise the rate to whatever they want. There's actually a Florida law, a Florida statute, 200.065, that limits what you're able to increase the taxes to. So I do put that in there just for disclosure, that the state does provide limitations. So as I kind of mentioned in previous years, the more you go into adopting that rate of the 3% cap, as it's sort of starting to significantly reduce, the state puts in laws that will keep you from increasing it at the rate that you may need. So if hypothetically you one day drop into a 4.0 type of rate, but you're in a downturn and you need that funding and you're looking at going up to a 7-point rate just to cover expenses, legally we would not be allowed to do that, just because they provide laws that restrict how high you're able to go. So per that Florida statute, that essentially limits you based on the number of voting members that are on council on what rates you're able to adopt. So everything is based on the previous year, so that's how they kind of do that. The state calculates these numbers and they give those to you based on your previous calendar year's history. So for 2025, this is technically what we're in at the moment. They look at the fiscal year 24 adjusted rollback rate, which adjusted means is that they have a rollback rate that they initially give, but they make adjustments to their property tax rolls, so they come out with an adjusted rate, right? So that happens after variance adjustments happen throughout the year, so they kind of have that tax roll. So based on that adjusted rollback rate from 24 coming into the year of the 6.8962, that means that your limitations as of today to adopt a rate would be you would have to have a majority vote, and your majority vote, which would for you would be a 3 vote because you're a 5-member party, you can only go up to 7.2072. And in a 2/3 vote, which for you would have to be a supermajority because it's technically between 3 and 4 people, so it would have to be a supermajority. So for a supermajority, the highest you could go is a 7.9279. So as you continue in that pattern, I would project those numbers. If you continue adopting the 3% cap rate, your rollback rate will also decrease, meaning that those adjustments and those limits would also continue decreasing. So as that naturally happens, because your tax base is growing and you're spreading it out more, it's just historically, I would predict that it would continue decreasing to, sometime where next year coming around, the majority vote may be somewhere in the 6.9, 6.8. So that's kind of the pattern that I've seen, and that my projection is that that would continue if you would continue just adopting based on our city charter. I always add this in here. It's a tax bill mock-up. I know when people get their tax bills, they oftentimes look at their home values and they think that that's what they're taxed on. It's essentially not what they're actually taxed on. So your tax bill is actually based on your taxable value, non-school amount. So they look at what your valuation is, there's exemptions, there's statutory limits of your Save Our Homes, of how much your home is actually valuing. So when you're looking at your property valuation amount, I kind of give a range from $10,000 to $200,000 is not unrealistic. I actually pull a tax bill that I do every year from someone we know who has been a longtime resident here and has an average home value of between $200,000 and $300,000, and his actual taxable value that his tax bill is on, and we'll kind of show that in a little bit, is $30,000, right? So it is kind of realistic what we're putting up. So let's look at the median, right? So let's say that you have a home where your property valuation is $75,000 after all of your exemptions. Based on that, based on the rate that we adopted this year, the Palm Bay portion of the tax bill is around $505.04. If we were to move into 26 adopting the 3% cap rate, you're looking at a reduction to $477.44. If you were to adopt the rollback rate, it actually goes up a little bit by $3 just because, like I mentioned, the rollback is higher. And if you were to move into the year and adopting the same rate and your property valuations do stay the same, and we have noticed that with all the exemptions, it's pretty stagnant still, we would be back at the 505. So you kind of see how that kind of impacts your home valuations. But then I also put in what that impact to the city is. So as you move into the bottom portion of that chart, I look at this year for fiscal year 25 at that adopted rate, we are generating $57.8 million. And then if we were to go ahead and maintain that rate into the next year, we're looking at an increase of approximately $9.6 million, and that is the revenue that we are looking at adding, as I talked about in the previous slides. So for a homeowner, like the property tax bill will kind of go into a little bit, if that taxable value of that property valuation amount doesn't change very much and that bill is the same, but we are spreading it out across more people that live in the city, that's that variance that for the city, we're not just still collecting 57 million, we are increasing that to roughly about 67 million or $9.6 million more. So it's just a visual to help people understand how that kind of impacts your tax bill. The next one is an actual tax bill breakdown. So again, this is based on that property that we use to kind of look at. One thing we highlight is that your tax bill that you receive, not all of those go to the city of Palm Bay. The city of Palm Bay only generates about 35% of that, where about 47% actually goes to schools. And then we have some that goes to Brevard County, and then there's some special districts. So it's just for some people a misnomer that that whole amount that you pay comes to the city of Palm Bay. Now that varies it's not a simple thing where, oh, you told me it was 46%. It does vary from person to person, but in general, we do stress that the city of Palm Bay's municipal portion, which is actually also includes the road bond, is only roughly about a little bit more than a third of what you're actually paying in total. Right, so this is the actual historical tax bill. So we've kind of looked at a 8-year historical of that individual whose tax bill that we kind of pay on. And so this is that story that I just told. You have a market value of a home that is $260,000, right? So this is a longtime resident who's been in Palm Bay for quite some time. And that property valuation for the recent year has increased. It's maybe slowing down again a little bit, like we're kind of seeing. So that $260,000 in market value is not actually what he's being taxed on, right? So we talk a lot about that Save Our Homes cap. So Save Our Homes is something that protects our homeowners, where the state actually has implemented a law where the assessed value of your home can only increase by 3%, right? So imagine that there's already that safeguard of what we're taxing you on, disregarding of how your market value is doing, but what we're taxing you on can only increase by 3%. So essentially, there already is a 3% cap in place that is by the state, right? So this homeowner who has a market value of $260,000, his assessed value immediately drops down to $85,200, right? So that is the only amount to start with that the county and the state can even tax that person on. Now, that person has exemptions. Most of us have if you're a homeowner, you have the $25,000 and $25,000 exemption. So that $260,000 home has now a taxable value of $35,200, right? So that kind of ties back to that slide that I just showed, that it is actually possible that homes that are valued in $200,000-$300,000 range are only being taxed on possibly a quarter of what the actual market value is. So that person, for a $260,000 market value home, the taxes that individual paid for the current year is $237.03. So when you're imagining, based on the whole tax bill, that is the amount that was generated for the city of Palm Bay for that home. And that is mainly, and I will say mainly, because the state does have already a 3% increase or Save Our Homes cap in place. The next slide I want to talk about is our general obligation or our GO bond debt millage rates. So as you know, we had $150 million in GO bonds that has been approved, and we've done 3 draws now on that. The third draw of that 50 million did hit the tax bill for 2025. So that was last year when we went through the preparation. So that annual debt service payment jumped from about 7 million to 10 million for the year that we're currently in. So that voted debt millage did increase for that year, just because you're going from a 2 draw for the 50 and 50 to adding that third draw that you now have to do debt service, principal and interest payments that you have to pay. So how we kind of assess that is that I calculate how much we have to pay for those 3 general obligation bonds. We cover principal and interest. And then based on those valuations that the property appraiser's office sends us, we set the rate to cover only that amount, right? We don't generate any more, we don't generate any less, so we set that tax rate to calculate, to bring in an estimated, we usually estimate at a 96% collection rate, so it's not even 100%, but it's really only covering those debt service payments, and those funds can only be used to pay principal and interest. For 26, you will see a reduction in the rate because your debt service, while it may stay the same, but remember I just mentioned in 25, you were carrying that third, and now we're staying stagnant. So while your debt service requirement hasn't changed, you're still paying that 10 million, but you're spreading that across more taxpayers, right? And because you do not have any additional general obligation bonds that you've drawn out on, unless there is a change on that, that will continue to happen. You will continue to see if growth continues to happen, you'll continue to see a rate decrease over the years, because we're really only collecting that amount and you're spreading it across more individuals. So then if you apply that to the tax rate process we just went through, if your annual home assessed value of what you're being taxed on kind of stays the same, we should see property owners could possibly see a reduction in that portion of their tax bill, just because our tax rate for the current year is 1.1210, but it will be decreasing to 0.9993. So that's just continuing to happen. So if your property valuations are sort of staying the same on what's being assessed, then there should be a decrease, but we shouldn't see an increase majority on any of those related types of taxes. Right. The last thing I kind of highlight is that we do usually have our state shared revenues not estimated at this time of the year yet. So those do make up, outside of property taxes, they're a larger portion of the general fund revenue. So what we usually do is just we do estimates for the year based on trending and how we're seeing things come in. Those are published by the Department of Revenue, and usually we see them sometime in the mid-July timeframe. Some come back a little bit later, not until August. So depending on the timeframe, we'll go ahead and make those adjustments. But if we don't see those adjustments fast enough, then we'll go ahead and just adjust them in the new year. So those are the items that are estimates, but we do like to true them up as soon as they're published. It depends on how fast the Department of Revenue, the Economic Development Department, actually publishes those items. So I always like to put that out there, that we are still kind of waiting for those numbers to come in. Right, the last important slide is what you still have left to do for the remainder of this budget process. So I will disclose that we are in the heavier part of it now, where council involvement and city management involvement is pivotal. Our official tax timeframe begins July 1st, and we have to get through the month of September in officially adopting the budget. So as I mentioned earlier, at your next council meeting, you will see the agenda item where you're officially approving the proposed rate for next year and the 2 public hearings in the month of September. The proposed rate you can set Until September, you can still choose to go down, but once you approve it and once that information is certified to the property appraiser, after that council meeting, you can no longer go above that rate. So if you were to set the rate at your 3% cap, and then in the August workshop, you may decide that, hey, you know, I do want to go to rollback. Legally, you would not be allowed to do that because you cannot go above what you're setting. So regardless, I've always recommended that you propose a rate possibly a little bit higher because you do still have that flexibility of going down. It is hurricane season, and I know we have a stabilization fund, but just know that what you are proposing isn't what you're necessarily yet approving. So I do put that out there. July 31st is when we're hoping to have a proposed budget to you. We have some time set aside for Monday where, because normally at this time, and I think that's just because we, you know, it's been a long 30 days that we're kind of working through and we're changing some things up. Usually at this time of the year, you may already have a proposed budget, just meaning of all the requests that we've talked through, we've already kind of built them in. We have not done that yet, so we have some time set aside on Monday, depending on you know, your guidance tonight. So we're hoping to have a nice proposed budget to you by July 31st, so you can kind of digest that a little bit. We have a second or a third optional workshop on your calendar for August 5th. Historically, in previous years, you don't have to have the workshop. If you like the proposed budget, you say I'm moving ahead as is, that is completely up to you. But we already have that sort of set aside on your calendar. The September dates. So I will say the September dates for the special counsel and the public hearing dates are extremely important. You will need to decide tonight if those dates are adequate, and I can kind of go into them in a little bit. There's many regulations on when and how you can have these meetings. So I have already kind of worked since February with the legislative department, and I know I've kind of brought them up multiple times, but you will have to move ahead after tonight and after next council meeting in setting those dates. Once you set those dates, you cannot change them. So we cannot deviate from the date and from the time and the location. It's very important. This is a statutory requirement. So in September, reason why I go with a Wednesday combination is because we are not allowed to have our public hearings on the same date as the Brevard County Commissioner, as they have their public hearings, and the school board. They have first dibs. No taxing authority in Brevard County is allowed to have their hearings on those particular dates. Generally, they do Tuesdays and Thursdays, right? So Tuesdays and Thursdays in the months of September are usually off limits because of that. So all the taxing authorities, many of them will stick with a Wednesday schedule just because they know that the counties kind of do the Tuesday and Thursday combo. And then also in September, you have council meetings. You will not be able to have them at the same time as the council meeting. Also, the reason why I pick the second and the fourth week of September and not the first and the third week of September is because legally, our office is only allowed to amend the previous year's budget 60 calendar days after the new budget is adopted. I do a true-up budget amendment in the month of November where we recognize any additional grants, we recognize any additional revenue, we do true-ups, so essentially, and I'm more of an accounting function where we sort of clean up that budget. In the month of October, you have a 3-week skip. So that means that if we were to move these public hearings to the first and the third week of September, the council meeting for that budget amendment in the month of November falls outside of 60 days. So I highly stress that these dates are chosen for those particular reasons to ensure that we're in compliance with all statutory laws. And I know last year we picked a Wednesday and Wednesday combination, but September 11th was on a Wednesday. So I know we had talked about that and we chose to move it to a Thursday just because of that reason. So I also took that into consideration. So just be mindful, we put a lot of work into calculating these days. Once you're okay with them, I have had these approved by the Department of Revenue as well. So that's a process I go through. I provide them our calendar and they actually approve that it's according to compliance. So those have to be decided upon tonight as well, and we have to stick with those. And again, we also have a 30-day deadline from adoption to publish the budget. So if all falls in line by October 24th, you should be officially receiving your published adopted budget. All right, and I believe that is it for our presentations. If we want to go ahead and open it up now for comments, kind of work through that rate and those hearing dates, address any questions.
Well, I'll go ahead and start with questions. Deputy Mayor, I'll start with you.
Yes, thank you. Could the fire chief come up and talk about the paramedic, solo paramedic?
Sure. Yep.
Yes, sir. How are you?
Good, sir. How you doing?
All right. What can I help with?
Can you just talk to me or talk to us exactly what is that program? Why is it needed? I know like Brevard County typically provides paramedic services to us. I think you have one or two typically on a,
So you want to know why we have the paramedic program?
like what is the solo paramedic program?
Solo paramedic? Okay.
Yeah.
The reason we have the paramedic program overall is while Brevard County is a ALS transport organization, the makeup of the county makes it to where that the units are not always available or they're delayed in what we could get to in the fire service. So the fire service has historically done both. In many, many organizations, they do both firefighting and the transport. Here we're a non-transport agency. What that does is it allows us to get to the incident before Brevard County in several cases, if not the majority of them, start patient care and do interventions that are life-saving in that period of time. Then Brevard County will arrive and they'll turn around, we'll transfer the patient to them for transport to the nearest facility based on what that injury or illness was. And the reason we have the solo medic is as we all go through paramedic school, we start as EMTs. Then you go out into the field, you go into school, you get licensed by the state of Florida to be a paramedic. When you come into an organization, and this is, I would venture to say pretty much every organization in the state of Florida, if not in several other states, is you have to have certain time to learn local protocol, which ties into our medical direction. So the medical director dictates what kind of drugs we can use, how much we can use them, when to push them, when not to push them. So what we're doing there is we're putting them through a program to where they're trained and assessed to make sure that not only are they good at the state level, but they have the local protocol that the medical direction oversees us with, and they can handle a patient as a lot of organizations have 2 paramedics per unit. That's not always possible in a lot of places. So we have a solo medic, and when we have the ability to put 2 on a unit, we do that. If we have mass casualties, if we have motor vehicle accidents, things like that. But what that does is it certifies that that individual can at that point treat a patient on their own without any help of another medic until other medics get there, or they can take care of it all the way through to delivery of care and transport to the facility. So that's what a solo medic is and how it ties into the medical or the emergency medical program altogether.
I don't have any other questions for the chief, but if he's since he's up, I don't know if the rest of the council does have other questions for
Anyone for Chief? Carry on.
Thank you.
Mr. Morton. And maybe this falls under transfers or intergovernmental, but the enterprise departments like building utilities that'll be occupying Building E and just other facilities in Palm Bay, are those enterprise funds paying towards the general fund, or are they, like, how's that money allocated? Like, I know like the building department currently has a lease that they're spending over up Minton Road, and all that money's out of their enterprise fund. They're going to be occupying Building E. Do they occupy that without expense, or is that are they paying their fair share towards
And
power, janitorial services, overhead, maintenance, et cetera?
so we do facilities chargebacks to the enterprise, we do labor allocations and fleet, so yes, they do pay back their proportionate share. We do have some numbers on that to the general fund.
Okay. Slide 32. For Angelique, maintaining the 6.7339 for fiscal year 26, we would still lose out on the 691 million of the 3%, at the 3%, that still retains the 3% cap?
No, so the 691 million is showing the new taxable value that you're reaping a benefit from this year is now subjected to the 3% cap. So essentially, you're no longer reaping that additional benefit from at any rate that you would put it at. So now it's part of your regular tax base.
And council has the ability, if so needed, to break the cap?
Yes, so council per your city charter, you would have to have a supermajority vote to exceed the 3% cap rate, which for 26 would be the 6.3658. So if you were to choose to go any amount above that, even if it is 0.0001, you would have to legally, per your city charter, have to have a supermajority vote, which would be 4 members of the council voting for that.
You said about what millage rate?
So your 3% cap rate is 6.3658. So that's the one that's sort of highlighted in
So if
that
we wanted
orange.
to adopt 6.7339, we would need a supermajority.
That is correct. You would, so for this evening, you can set that proposed, but as you move into the official adoption in the months of September, yes, you do legally have to have that 4-1 vote at minimum to adopt that rate.
Okay. And general question for whoever wants to answer. So the road bond millage is around that, what, 0.9? So if like vacant lots have a great deal on what they're paying and towards the road bond program compared to somebody that has a home?
So how we calculate this is based on the total taxable value. So whatever the property appraiser has appraised the home value at for whatever parcel it is, whether it's commercial, whether there's a home on it or not a home on it, they collect that all into a citywide tax roll. And that is how the rate's calculated. So whatever tax bill that particular homeowner or owner, property owner receives, that would be the rate that goes against whatever the valuation of that property is. So of course, if you are just owning land versus land plus a home, your taxable value would be higher, but that rate will be the same and is applied to anyone who has a tax bill in the county.
That system's so broken, right? Like there's just a group in town that, own 2,000 or 3,000 lots, streets that weren't paved, and they're paying next to nothing and getting their roads paved, and then their lots go up, double or triple in value. Okay, thank you.
Any other
That
questions?
concludes my questions.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councilman Langevin, any questions? No. Councilman Hammer?
I had a couple. First one, if we do a freeze on the millage rate, is there a way to do it only on homes and properties that are not homesteaded?
No, so that would be a legal question outside of that at the state level or at the property owner's level. So
it's
it
nothing we
is,
can do.
for us, we set a rate that is for our operational purpose. So that essentially is what the general fund ad valorem taxation runs on. So our rate is applied the same to anybody. And so that question is outside of how we've set our tax rate. But
Okay. And secondly, I saw you got your chairs in there. At that price, it's looking like it's $333 a chair. Is that right?
Yes, so I think that our city clerk can answer that, and it has not been funded, it is a request, so I think she got the quote back for the chairs.
Yes, that was based off of the state contract.
Okay, thank you.
Any additional questions?
That is it for now.
Councilman Johnson, any questions, sir?
I have plenty, sir.
Okay, so
All right.
they're taking down notes, sir. Carry on.
So the first one, if you go back to slide 34, in regards to the tax millage rate impact, I would love for us to update that. The average median property value for a home in Palm Bay is roughly $300,000. So I think those numbers should reflect that. That's just, you know, an area that we can address for the next budget workshop. Other than that, I'll be brutally honest. I'm not for breaking the cap. I'm actually I'm content with the 6.3658 millage rate. But I do have two questions. One, what was the original estimate of Building E, and what is the current budget estimate for Building E at this time? And if you don't have the numbers right now, if I get it in the email, that's fine for me as well.
Yeah, we did a bunch of work on that this afternoon, Councilman Johnson. I'll definitely email you. We have those figures.
Okay, that works. The second question, we see, you know, Governor DeSantis is speaking on the property tax legislation, and a lot of key state legislators are speaking on it as well. Have we been in communication with our lobbyists or anybody at the state level on, you know, potentially how it can affect us, or how we can try to get the language that they're proposing amended so it can benefit us and not just be, you know, a blanket bill like we've seen throughout the years of Florida state legislation. So that way our city is protected, our residents are protected, all stakeholders are protected. So have we started those conversations as well?
So we are having those conversations. I know what I saw this last week was he essentially nixed or vetoed, I don't know the proper term of art, but there was going to be a commission and a proposal to study the impacts, and he forewent that. And so that's moving relatively quickly. We're trying to monitor how quick he's moving and what those directives are. I do not have additional information on impacts. Again, now that that study or that committee has been disbanded or done away with, to study and assess. But yes, we are tracking it, and I don't have any information germane to that issue at this point.
Okay. I'm good, Mr. Morton. I'm good, Mayor. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Morton, you started out this workshop with a comment based on an example of a public works item that we hadn't purchased, and it's costing so much more. I didn't get those details, but I wanted you to cover that.
Yes, I'm going to speak in round terms, and Christine, if you remember the exact, I'll go, and if I'm off, but I remember during the presentation when Public Works did their fleet request, there was a tractor, I don't know if you have the number of the item, and I think it was roughly a purchase price of $47,000 when this tractor was purchased. It's now many, many years old, and the maintenance number we saw is for the lifespan, because it keeps getting band-aided along. We were $147,000 roughly into maintenance of that item, because it's exceeded its scheduled replacement time.
So we've paid 3 times the amount just to keep it in operation?
Correct.
And what other examples, if any, do you have regarding our infrastructure, meaning other operating necessities?
So I was using that as an illustrative example, which is also why I pulled out our advanced failure rate calculation. That, again, roughly more than half of our square footage is at what we would term an advanced failure rate of 25 years of age of older. So it's, deferred capital maintenance, it's leaks, it's, doors that are falling apart at Tony Rose I've been asked by the supervisor of elections to replace. It's, it's those systemic problems that don't improve. They can be band-aided again, which continually, it's the old adage my grandma used to say, a stitch in time saves 9. We're not doing that stitch. And so then when we get back, rather than R&R or maintenance, things are being maintained past past what they should be maintained. It's, when let's talk about a 25-year-old fire engine. I don't know of many 25-year-old cars that are on the road. People get rid of them for a reason after 5 or 8 or 9 years. They get rid of their personal vehicles. We have fleet vehicles that are 20 years old. And the reason is because they're unreliable, the maintenance, the safety, the compliance. So we have $100 million of those examples across the city at the moment of maintenance we keep trying to kick down the road. It's not going to disappear and it's not going to go away. And so what we're trying to do, when we have a third presentation tonight, we're looking at every available exhaustive option, but there's not enough savings that we could cut, and there's not enough new revenue in terms of part of this council's mission. I've heard this great term thrown out of an exuberant tax base. That's a great goal. Developing the compound to start to shift the burden of taxes off of our residential tax base to more industry, to shift that tax base through redevelopment, whether it's Bayfront, whether it's adaptive reuse of our zone of discard buildings throughout the community. Those are all strategies that are real, and they're going to be acted on or being acted on. In fact, as you know, we've kicked off the compound strategy with significant investment of time. We also have a proposal in this budget of some resources to make that a reality. And those strategies are going to take time and effort to continue to materialize. And the unfortunate reality is that at this particular moment in time, as we saw, 46%, I believe it was, of our revenue is based off of our property taxes. And those aren't just, we keep showing the residential example. Those are property taxes wholesale across the city, whether it's residential, commercial, industrial. It is the ad valorem that impacts every single parcel in the city of Palm Bay.
Thank you. I want to go to slide 31, Ms. Angelica. And if we could just show that slide 31. And I remember specifically of your detailed explanation that we're going to exceed the rollback rate, and repeatedly. And there was 1 year, and keep this in mind, just a few short years ago, we were at 8.5, an ad valorem of 8.5%. And now we're talking about trying to maintain that 6.739. But I want to go back to, when was it, 2022? I recall we were at, if you see that, 7.595. And in order to maintain that 7.595, we were able to achieve a great deal of catch-up from the previous budget cycle in replacing police vehicles, in enhancing our public safety. And I want council to take a visual of that because as we continue to decrease the services that are needed to maintain, because as Mr. Morton so eloquently put it, we're not at that commercial and industrial rate yet. We're only 65 years old, and I see that the 3% cap has really worked against us in a sense, and which is when the last Charter Review Commission, they proposed at the last second, which didn't have enough, was can they increase the 3% cap with a maximum of not to exceed 5%. Something like that would have really helped out our city maintaining the services. So I wanted to highlight that 7.595, and I know my colleague, Mr. Johnson, is listening because it was that public safety connotation. And I think we're at that point again with what we need for our fire stations. Our response times are still challenging. What our increasing police department's needs are in order to protect their safety is providing them the best equipment. And so these are real life challenges, and in setting, and I know we're just discussing this, but those are my statements today. The 6.7339 or 6.739, that would be maintaining last year's tax rate. And it is needed to maintain the safety of our public. So I would suggest we establish that. I know that we're not voting on it today, And I know what it would take for that to be implemented, but what I see is the safety of our community is paramount. And in that, those will be my comments. We do have folks from the public, and I want to give them an opportunity to come forward and speak. So is anyone in the audience wish to speak at this time? Please step forward, Master Chief.
Bill Batten, 586 Ocean Spray Street, Southwest. I've got two questions and one statement, I guess. The first one is the utility department, and Mr. Jaffe, you brought it up, that it comes under the enterprise fund, but I noticed going through the slide that they were still requesting from the general fund roughly $18 million. And I was just curious as to why we're drawn from the general fund from the utilities department. You know, I don't want to be mean to anybody, but that's the way I am. They're getting funds, use their funds, not my general fund. The next one is I'd recommend to council that you go ahead and set your rate high, because we don't want to cut our own throat and set it low to make everybody feel good in the beginning. You can make everybody feel good when it comes time for the vote and be at the lower level. We don't want to cut our throat. And the last one is a request. When I was going through the agenda packet, none of these slides were in the agenda packet, and I'd like to review stuff before I have to come to the council meeting. So if that would have been available, it would have been beneficial to me, but I did get a lot out of this meeting. And I'm glad we dropped down to two months worth of operating funds instead of 4, because I saw what it was going to have.
Yes, sir.
And that's it.
Step forward.
Thank you very much.
Step forward. Mr. Moore, would you please respond?
Yes, so
Regarding the
I think there's
utilities.
one question to respond to.
Yes.
And I think we'll pull up the slide that Mr. Batten's referring to. And what that actually is that's the utility taxes. So that's the service charge on the utility bill. So that tax rate is counted as a general fund revenue. So in essence, the utility tax, think of it like a sales tax on the utility, comes back to the general fund.
Thank you.
And that's very, in fact, I'm not aware, there might be one, I'm not aware of an example where that doesn't occur. That's very common occurrence just from the experience.
Yeah, so just to follow up on that, it's actually not the general fund paying that out. It's actually a revenue for the general fund that's coming in. So there's nothing going out to the utilities.
Nothing going out. Okay, thank you. Anyone else in the audience wish to speak? Okay, council, it's on us. What is your pleasure?
I'd like to maintain current.
I'm in agreement with you, Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with you guys.
I am too. When I'm in the community, everybody's saying I need more of this and more of that. I don't hear anybody saying we need less of it. So,
All right, sir.
I'm going to be in agreement with.
Do you have enough, Councilman Johnson? Councilman Johnson. Is Councilman Johnson on the line? Councilman Johnson.
No other comments? He has no comments.
Say again, ma'am?
He has no comments.
Okay. Sir, were you ringing in?
Yeah, I'm good, yeah.
Okay.
I rang in before you.
Copy that. All right. So no other additional comments? Anything you wanted to conclude with, Mr. Morton?
I need to.
So we've got two things. We've got to zero in on those public hearing dates and get those nailed down. And then staff was not done with the presentation. We have a follow-up to the list of questions we received from council, and we did want to share that information tonight as well.
Then carry on, sir.
Yes, so I just have,
Do you need a motion for those dates?
no, so not tonight. So what I will do is I will prepare your official legislative memo that you'll see at next week's regular council meeting to do that official approval. With that, I will be able to officially file the proposed tax rate with the property appraiser, so that's what'll go into the tax bill. I would like to zero back to the 3 dates that I do need a confirmation
Yes.
on. So I want to kind of zero in on the 2 September public hearings. Are we okay with having them on those dates?
Yeah, they're Wednesdays, you said.
They are Wednesdays. I know I try to take everyone's schedule into consideration, but it is extremely difficult just because there's state laws that don't allow us to have them at certain times, on certain days. So those dates usually is the times for the city of Palm Bay, and most taxing authorities will have them on Wednesdays.
Well, the mayor will be here, council.
I'll be here.
All
Okay.
right.
So I'll go ahead and put those into your memo next week as well. And then we just want to know if we do want to have a second workshop so we can prepare for that. I will say I will highly encourage it just because we haven't quite presented you with a proposed. So one thing that we would like to do is officially complete a proposed budget based on that tax rate. And look at all of the things that we want to look at, all the high priority requests. And then at the next workshop on August 5th, we can actually officially provide you with a presentation on the proposed budget and everything that's funded. And we can sort of go into that next phase before we officially adopt the budget.
So we've got July 31st coming up.
So that's when we will provide you with, hopefully we'll meet that deadline of provide you with the actual proposed budget. So we'll publish it on the website. We'll send you the link. We'll provide you with a list of, out of that, hundreds of millions of what is being requested, what we're actually funding into the budget. So by July 31st, we will officially provide you with what we're proposing for next year based on the rates. That will include all the enterprise funds, general fund. It's your full package citywide. So you have maybe about a week to digest it. And then August 5th, we can do the actual workshop and do it in the same format and simply provide you in this type of setting the proposed budget. And then we can have further discussions at that time, but we would like to put a bow on it and move into that adoption phase at that point. So it's optional if you'd like to have the workshop or not.
Okay, thank you. So you don't need that in the motion, us just saying yay, we're good to go? Okay, we're good to go, gentlemen? Thumbs up?
That's right.
It's okay.
So we'll go ahead and get
So-
that on the
okay.
calendar.
So then I know that you want to give some updates, Mr. Morton?
Yes, thank you, Honorable Mayor, City Council. We've got a sort of a two-part presentation. You know, we did get a list of exhaustive questions, very good questions from council in response to budget strategies, budget ideas. I think it's important that we respond. We've only had 30 days to work on these, so from the outset, I'll just say that we tried to provide the best robust information we could, the most complete answers, issues we could. On ones that we're still unsure about, we'll provide you with the answers that we have and ideas and strategies we're working to move forward. And there's some that we just simply don't know yet within the 30-day window, but we didn't want to leave these questions unanswered before delivering you a budget since they were asked by the council. So with that, we're going to start with our Finance Director, Larry Wojciechowski, to go ahead and start the presentation.
Well, thank you, sir. Welcome, Larry. And would you repeat his last name, sir?
Wojciechowski.
Outstanding job. I've always had a problem with that. Carry on, Larry.
Well, good evening, Mayor and Council. What we're going to try and do, as Mr. Morton just explained, we're going to go through and trying to answer the majority of your questions that have been asked over the last 60 days. As he made comment, we had 30 days to work on it, but I think we did a pretty good job of assembling as much information as we possibly could for you tonight. The areas that we're going to discuss tonight are, first of all, finance, and it's just general information. We're going to talk about how we invest our funds, because questions came up about that. Debt, because we talked about debt capacity and different items like that. And we're also going to talk about impact fees. We're going to move on and we're going to talk about fire fleet and a strategy to build out the fire station. Parks and facilities, talk about building E and other items, different parks. The VSO, the Veteran Service Officer, we're going to discuss. Interdepartmental cost allocation, because there's a discussion about how money moves around within the city. And then there's a litany of other items that I have listed. And then after I'm finished, Sean Spillers is going to actually talk about leases versus purchase. Okay, let's see how this works. Okay, one question that came up was the half-cent sales surtax that Brevard County has. Question is, do we have the ability to tap into that? Well, we did some research, and there's actually two different surtaxes that Brevard County has. The first one is the voter approved, that is for the public schools. That, of course, can only go to schools, and that one actually expires in December of '26. That's for their capital needs. The next one that we have is the one for the Indian River Lagoon, the Sorrel tax. And that one again also ends in December 26. And again, that is one that the funds can't come to us, it goes to Brevard County, and it's voter approved. We do have a half-cent sales tax that was actually discussed earlier, and we do get a portion of that. It's automatic, it comes to us, and it's part of the general fund. City investments. Part of your package, I have issued, I gave to you, we operate off of an investment policy here in the city of Palm Bay. It dictates to us how we can invest the funds, where we can invest the funds, percentage-wise. Very detailed. We also have PFM is a organization that helps us invest the funds. That's who we utilize to invest our funds. Another thing that's part of that package that you received is on a quarterly basis, we actually receive from PFM everything that they invest for us. It actually breaks it down by the shares, when we purchased it, the interest that we receive, and Ruth Chapman, Assistant Director, actually sits down on a monthly basis and actually balances it to what we receive from PFM to ensure that the funds are going into the right place, that we're not breaking our own policies because we have assigned percentages that we can only invest.
Larry,
Yes, sir.
where can the public see this?
It is actually on our website under finance or under the budget.
Okay, just want to highlight that the public can actually see this.
Yes.
In real time, sir?
The policy's out there, but we do not put the PFM report out there, but we can actually start doing that.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's important to disclose that information to our citizenry. I mean, if we can legally, anyway. I think this is good intel.
Okay.
Carry.
We will do that. Now we're going to go into the debt portion. Questions came up about our debt for the city. It was discussed on what's our rating, what's our bond rating? Well, we have two current bond ratings that we've received. In fact, we just received one from Fitch in 2024, and as you can see, we're AA. It actually went up from what it was previously. And in fact, today I sent an item to Fitch, and they're going to be updating our rating next month. So I can let you know if that changes next month. The next one that we have is S&P Global. That one was done back in June of 23. And as you can see, that's AA minus. And again, that was actually upgraded from what it was before. So we are going in the right direction as far as our bond rating is concerned. There was a question about our bond capacity and how much we can bond and how do we do it. Bond capacity is based off of coverage that's dictated by the user of the bonds, or the issuer of the bonds, excuse me, and our revenue growth. The city's capacity right now is absolutely phenomenal. It's at 3.0. If we actually start bonding and we bond too much, eventually our coverage is going to drop down to what it's called 1.5. And once we get there, our bond rating is actually going to drop. Now, the next thing that's going to pop up is actually a chart that's going to show in the corner there. As you can see, 2.0 is the recommended coverage by our financial advisors. You never want to drop below that. Now, in this chart, if you would see, it shows three different ways of growth, revenue growth. One of it is stagnant, zero growth. The other one is 1.5%, and the next one is 3%. Worst case scenario, of course, is 0% growth, but we do a bond capacity or coverage of 2.0. We still have the capacity to go out and get $66 million in bonds. However, in a good situation where our revenue is actually increasing by 3%, that increases all the way up to $90 million that we still have capacity to go get bonds. Bond refinancing, that was another question. Can we refinance any bonds? The only one that we have available right now that is actually going to be callable here in October of '25, and I just recently spoke to the financial advisors, and they did a comparison, and there would be no benefit as of right now to refinance, zero benefit, because you have the cost of reissuance and everything like that, so there is no opportunity right there. The next callable bond that we have is in October of '27, so we have another 2 years to wait before we can actually even look at refinancing any of our bonds. There is a part that is always asked about our debt service, our annual debt service. And this is a list of all of our general fund debt that we have out there. And the important one that I actually like to look at is off to the far right-hand side where it's the final payment. And it shows the final payment and when it's all due. The next slide that we're gonna show is...
Before we go, can we
Okay,
back
sure.
up? It's just worth, mentioning, again, I know you council's aware of it, for those listening and maybe those here that, the philosophy of bonding is not financing, bonding is debt. And so I just want to be really clear that when we look at our bonding capacity and we say, hey, there's an opportunity, it's debt. It's actually debt service, and you can see the impact of debt service with interest payments, P&I, all those things. So I just want to be clear on that.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay. The next slide that's showing here is I wanted to start showing the interest rates and everything that we are paying and the different call dates that we have. And there's different categories that are listed here. The first three are listed actually the GO bonds, which is the paving debt. And that, of course, is being paid by a dedicated millage, a voter-approved millage, so it is what it is, unfortunately. The next set is special bond. We have a couple of different categories here, and if you would look under what they call the call date, you're gonna see a couple of items that actually are called make whole call. So if we wanted to refinance those particular bonds, you have to pay the entire amount of the bond, so there is no benefit at all to refinance those bonds. Okay?
One more comment.
Yes.
And when you look at the top here, you see general obligation bonds, and of your bonding that you perform as a municipality, and when I say as any municipality, your general obligation or GO bonds are generally your most troublesome because those are paid back through general fund revenues only. So there are instances where a utility, which is an enterprise fund, may ask you to issue a bond. That is generally tied to a rate, so you have a repayment rate and repayment schedule assessed off the strength of your ratepayers, and rates are adjusted in accordance to handle that. And what that allows you to do is front infrastructure, right? We never build a plant and then sit and wait 10 or 15 years for customers because the plant would fall apart with no usage. So sometimes timing of construction of utility plants, we do discuss bonding potential, but your GO bonds are the ones you generally want to avoid when all possible.
There is one item also on here that I'd like to point out, and within the special obligation debt, if you look at the one that's called Series 2019, that one was refinanced back in 2019, and on the far right-hand side, I want to point this out. They refinanced the 2013 bonds, and they actually had a savings. We saved $15.78 million by refinancing them. So I just want to point that out, that we are constant. When we have the opportunity, we're looking to make sure that if we refinance, there is a savings. The next slide, and again, it's just a couple more that are on here. The ones at the very bottom, where it's franchise fee debts, I want to point those out because those are actually going to be paid off relatively soon. One of them actually gets paid off next year. And also in 31. Impact fees. This is going to be a very interesting conversation. What I have, because of course, the questions came up about impact fees and what we have available and if anything's obligated to projects already. What I would like to point out is these charts are, of course, for all 4 of the impact fees that we collect: the police, parks, fire, and transportation. What I did is I broke it up by the 4 nexuses, the 4 zip codes, thank you. And I went back, or we went back all the way to 2017 to see all of the impact fees that have been collected. Okay, that's the first row that's there, impact fees collected. Then the next one where it says total funds remaining. This is information that we receive on a monthly basis to say how much funds are left within that particular zip code. Our ordinance states that we have to spend our impact fees within 7 years. So what I ended up doing is I started looking at this and I'm thinking, okay, in a couple of these categories, it looked like we haven't spent all the money that we need to. So I looked at it and I said, okay, what I need to do is pull out the interest that has been earned, because interest has no bearing on the 7-year rule. So I ended up pulling out all of the interest that we've earned over that period of time and came up with a new number. And I also show on here where it says impact fees used through. If you would notice, we are the only one that we have to spend money on within the next year is actually over in the parks impact fees for 32909. We need to spend $150,000 through next year. Otherwise, we may have to return the money. So I just want to put that out there. And one other thing is, the question was, what has been obligated of these funds? Currently, I am actually working with Public Works. In fact, we're meeting tomorrow morning to try and get a grip on all of the obligations that we have out there. We have developer agreements that are out there that money comes in and it's committed to a certain project. We need to make sure that we are setting that money aside specifically for those projects so it doesn't get double accounted for somewhere else. We have to dedicate the money. So I'll be meeting with Public Works, and we're going to be working on this for the next however long it takes, and we can always come back and give you that information when we have it. The other ones, the police, parks, and fire, those are fairly simple, but it's the TIF, the transportation one, that's quite difficult. But we will get that information as soon as we can to you. Fire fleet strategy. What we're looking at, and we've been asked to do, is, of course, we saw previously that fire is looking for ladder trucks and heavy rescue vehicles. What we wanted to do is we are investigating the ability to fund these build-outs of these vehicles and not have to go out and get loans. So what we've done is we're trying to establish a 24-month period and a 3-payment plan. And we actually received some information from a couple of companies that they're willing to do that because it takes a good 2 years to build these items out. So I want to show you actually the ladder truck is estimated, that cost right there is $1.6 million. The heavy rescue is 1.79, and Mr. Morton, I know you have.
Go ahead.
Oh, this right here actually covers the amount of the extra funding that we're asking for in the millage. So that money gets, if your idea is to use that funding to pay for public safety, that right there will pay for it. You'll be paying for 2 vehicles, okay? But that's if we pay it all straight right up front. However, we're looking at possibly doing a 3-payment plan. So this is just a plan right here. If everything is approved and we move forward, we would try and time the first payment in November of 25, if everything would be approved and you decide to do this. This would be, for the ladder truck, it would cost us $542,000, or the heavy rescue, $598,000. Payment 2 would be in 26, same period of time, same dollar amount. And payment 3 would be in October of 27, and it would just be the difference. And in fact, if we do it this way, that paperwork that we actually have actually shows that we would actually receive a discount if we paid it in October of 27. But I don't build that in here because everything here, of course, is estimates. Oh, okay.
Yeah, there's no interest or finance.
And
It's just
there's no interest finance.
So just a strategy we're considering. We called it a 3-year roll-up. We asked, I think council had also asked, but we said, hey, if we consolidate this and make 3 payments tied to our fiscal years, it actually turns out to be a 24, 25-month schedule. The obvious risk is we're obligating the money, right? We're obligating the money in years out as well. Have to be aware of that, in the 26 budget we'd have to allocate, and the 27 budget we'd have to allocate. In the 27 budget, depending on the timing of the payment of the new revenues and our roll forward balance, we may have to come back and ask council for an interfund loan for a short period of time. That would be a loan from ourselves to pay for it, depending on where our general fund reserves are. But there's several strategies to accomplish that.
And again, that allows us to spread it out over 3 fiscal years, so it's easier. The payment plan is a better option than a bank line of credit or bonding. I did some research on this and actually built it out for a 5-year loan. And I utilized, the interest rates that were available to me. And if we actually went out and got a loan and did it for 5 years, we would end up paying $276,000 in interest for something that we can spread out over a 3-year period ourselves. And what I want to show here is that $276,000 has potential to be 4 patrol vehicles.
And the point of that was just sharing, that's the importance of, having the revenues to make those decisions for the critical needs now is, as I mentioned, it truly results in a future cost savings to the taxpayers. It feels like pain, but it's cheaper and it is more effective in the long run.
Okay. Next portion is we're trying to work on a fire station strategy. And we actually had a meeting back in June to discuss with a vendor to try and develop a public-private partnership. I unfortunately can't speak that much to a public-private partnership. If you have any desire to know more about it, would you have any? No? Okay. No.
So this is one of those ones we didn't completely answer. We had a meeting with a public-private partnership vendor. They've built several fire stations in the state of Florida on a long-term lease-to-own model and a long-term lease model. Our next step in that, we've seen documents, we've seen a great presentation. It looks very intriguing. It looks like it could be a tremendous opportunity. They can even handle building maintenance and M&O through the lease. We're going to go check out a couple of their buildings. We've talked to the cities who are so far given a good report, and it was a great strategy for them in lieu of like a temporary or something. They're getting a full building at a spread cost delta. So next thing we want to do is dig into the weeds with their engineers, designers, with the fire department, and we're going to do some site visits to see how these are actually panning out and what the user experiences is. We've heard from the vendor, we've heard from some city people. We want to know from the user perspective, from the firemen, from the public safety folks, how is it really working out and what's the benefit, what have been the negatives. So this is one is please stay tuned. We're going to continue to work through it.
Thank you. Okay. Of course, if we have a fire station, we have to have the land to put it on. So we're actually working on land acquisition for the Southeast Fire Station 9. We have an RFP out right now to bring in a realtor on board to assist us in actually the acquisition of the land. And we have actually currently, there have been 2 properties that have been looked at down in the southeast area for possible acquisition. And we're going to, of course, try and use the realtor services to assist us in the land acquisition. Fire impact fee study. Fire impact fee study, there was a, Stantec did an analysis 2 years ago pertaining to impact fees, and they created new impact fees, and it was built according to the state statute by how it needs to go over a 4-year period to be able to increase your impact fees. What we're asking to possibly do is to do a needs study to see if we can actually advance that impact fee to move it to current year instead of waiting 4 years to build it up. The impact rate or the impact would only impact single and multifamily homes. All the other ones that are out there, it was a one and done. It was done in 24, 25, and it hasn't increased. But the other two, these two actually do increase.
And for clarity, when you say single-family, multifamily, we're talking about new construction, not
yes.
a fee passed to existing residents.
Correct, yes. Okay. What I want to show here is just what we were talking about. You can see that there's a 4-year step program to increase the impact fees for fire. What we want to do is actually bring a vendor. We have a vendor on board right now, but we want to utilize funding that, because they gave us a task order of that dollar amount, $15,000, to assist us with the study to see if we can actually, again, move the impact fee cost to current year and not wait the 4 years to get to that dollar amount.
And that'll come before council for us to
I would-
vote on, or do you need?
I was hoping if it's appropriate to get some consensus tonight. I've spoken with the consultant, Stantec.
Okay.
They're telling us it can be done, and it looks like we will have a justification for the extraordinary need for fire capital to put on the impact fee schedule. The cost of the service contract is 15.6. There's some statutory timeframes. They would assess the study, they would conduct the study, they would work with staff to meet the Florida statutory guidelines on the timing of the study and the public hearings that have to occur and notifications. And then it looks like if a final decision is not a fait accompli that it's done, but we're assuming, again, from our conversations, that it looks, yes, we're gonna qualify, then we would come back with the appropriate, I believe, ordinances and or resolutions to enact it. But what we're asking for is, does council support us moving out to get the final disposition on expediting this impact fee analysis to bring back a proposal to you?
Well, I'm a big thumbs up on this one, and I'll share also. I think there was some legislation that would have prevented us from going in this direction this past legislative session. Am I saying that correctly?
Correct. There was a Florida statute that came out that may bar future investigation of this because of the date initially of our impact fee study in the fiscal year 24-25, and apparently the statutory dates, which I don't have in front of me, of the pending changes. We should be able to, looks like, according to the consultant, we should be able to complete this in time and avoid that preemption that is coming down the pipeline from the state.
So I'm a big thumbs up on this, gentlemen, in doing this study before they close the curtain.
I had half a page to discuss this, so thank you.
Okay.
I'm for it.
Okay, yes?
Yeah.
You're big thumbs up.
Has the city attorney reviewed that?
Preliminarily, I sent some documentation to Patricia. I can't recall the last time we circled back on the asking of the question. She did look at the process, and I don't know that we got to a final answer on that pending our conversation with Stantec. And I don't know, I didn't ask her to be prepared to weigh in tonight, so I don't know if that was an expectation.
We talked, it is possible, in theory, at that point in time, he hadn't talked to them as far as their timeline. There was some concerns about whether we would meet the timelines. So he's aware of the timelines and that there is a crunch. We haven't, talked more as far as putting in that timelines, but he's talked with the consultant. It is possible, but it is tight.
Yeah, we have to get moving.
So if we agree to pay the consultant the 15.6 and they don't meet the deadline, then what?
Yeah, I mean, it would be a performance in the contract that they meet the deadline. We meet the deadlines before we execute it. Frankly, what's going to happen is if we get consensus, is we're going to try to work that out and bring something back, hopefully to the next meeting. They're working on that, the meat of the agreement. And if it satisfies you and the city attorney, we can take action. If not, we'll see if we can still meet it. It is tight.
And just larger discussion on impact fees, like where are we at? Can Stantec evaluate the nexuses? Or what does that process look like to minimize zip codes to quadrants, or from going to 4 to 2, or just citywide?
I did not ask that question yet. That's an excellent question. I know that's been a concern. I did not raise that. I think that'll be a much larger process, but I definitely can ask them that question and ask us to give us a thought process or a letter or a proposal on what that, if it's feasible and what it could look like.
Because
I will say that part of the nexus, there are multiple ways to do it. That way was how management decided to do it. It has to bear a relation. You're not going to be able to take, the southwest and put it with, something north. But as far as how you divide it, as long as it makes sense, the zip codes is what management came up with, but there are other ways, it could be divided into quadrants, but there are other ways that we can do it. I mean, certainly a consultant could help it. It could matter, staff could do it. It's just a matter of making sure that it makes sense. You're not going to be able to take something from one side and it's completely different, because you always want to make sure that the ratepayers in that area are getting the benefit. But there are other ways that aren't just zip codes. It just has to tie in.
I think identification of regional facilities would be another avenue to discuss, because you can't
like
use all the
parks.
zip codes on a
You got
regional.
a regional park,
Right, or another regional, there's other regional facilities that would qualify.
or like
So-
police headquarters or things of that nature.
Potentially,
Right.
yes, yes.
So to that argument, that's a bigger conversation right now when we're talking about, I don't want to muddy the waters in this, right? What we're looking at is trying to meet a deadline, making that part of that contract. So I wanted to give Councilman Johnson an opportunity, because I'm not making a visual of him, to see if he wanted to weigh in on this. Councilman Johnson?
I'm good with moving forward, Mayor.
All right, thank you. So you got thumbs up on this?
We'll get on it and try to deliver and bring something back that we can hopefully meet the
Just,
timelines.
I guess, one other question, Mayor, is, like, why just fire? Why not?
No, I think,
It's the only one eligible for adjustment at this point. The other ones are, we can't demonstrate an extraordinary case need, and police apparently is appropriate based off the data in the study. The only one in that study done in fiscal year 24-25 that showed a capital delta to the extent to be able to even demonstrate extraordinary need was fire. So,
Roads didn't qualify?
well, we just increased those.
Well, I understand that, but it wasn't done under this program. It was done 50% every 4 years, I believe.
We just increased them effective.
go back to the table, the quad
But
table,
not based on the extraordinary needs, just based on the 50% every 4 years.
the one that showed the 4 categories, please. Because I think those were the 4, and that's another question if we, police, fire, transportation? Yep, I'll ask that question as well. I didn't consider that, and I was told that it wasn't eligible, but I'm gonna verify since you bring it up again and just make sure. I mean, I'm 99% sure, but let me just double check and verify so I don't miss another opportunity since you bring it up. Thank you.
So you got a thumbs up?
Do we
Carry
wanna?
on.
do we wanna-
And so to his argument, transportation, right?
I was gonna say,
Carry
can we amend that we have thumbs up on transportation and fire?
And
if-
fire,
if-
and police.
To investigate.
Yeah, fire, and if we
I'll
can, police.
I'll just ask all 4 then, just
Yes.
double check and verify
Yes.
what I've been told is actually accurate. Okay.
Thumbs up on everyone. I didn't see Councilman Johnson, but we got 4.
Thank you.
Oh, he said, yes, he did say, yes, he's good to go. He's good with it, as you were. Thank you, Therese.
Okay.
Thanks
And-
for clarifying that. Councilman Johnson said he's good to go. All right, carry on, sir.
Okay. The next part is parks and facilities. And the next discussion is actually going to be about Building E, the 3rd floor, the actual build-out estimates. Design, $75,000. The actual build-out is $1.2 million. Furniture, $225,000, for a total of $1.5 million. And at this time, I'd like to turn it over to Juliet for a discussion.
Thank you, and if it's all right with Mr. Morton, I just wanted to go back to Deputy Mayor Jaffe's question about the funding of Building E and whether the enterprise funds pay their proportionate fair share. Building E, it has no general fund dollars in it at all. So 50% of the building is funded by ARPA funds, and 50% is funded by building. The utilities portion, which is 23% of the overall building, utilities will be paying back the building fund for that portion. So ultimately, the building will be owned by the enterprise fund and the general fund in proportionate shares. I just wanted to clarify that. and also to Councilman Johnson's original question about the budget. So the contract was awarded in December of 2023, and the construction contract was $15,028,000 roughly. The budget at that time was $16,519,379. In February, when I came and I talked about the allocation between ARPA funds and building funds and how it was all shaking out, the total budget for Building E now is estimated at $18.4 million. That includes construction, design, FFE, IT, and all the contingency funds for the project. So there is an increase of $1.8 million from our budget when we awarded the contract. That increase is being absorbed entirely by the enterprise fund, by the building fund. The amount of ARPA dollars contributed to this project is $9,269,000, and that has never changed throughout the duration of the project. And there's no general fund dollars being used for the construction or outfitting of Building E. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you. Carry on.
Okay, we're looking at potential funding sources for this particular build-out. And currently, within the ARPA fund itself, we have actually earned $1.7 million in interest as of June 30th. So potentially, if your desire was, we could utilize interest to build out the third floor. Currently, the departments that are moving in to the third floor is actually planned right now to be procurement and finance, to totally fill up the third floor. There will be a little bit of area, of course, for future build-out or future growth.
So, Mr. Morton, are you bringing this back, or did you need a consensus on this item as well?
Yeah, I wouldn't mind consensus, because we're going to meet Monday to build a budget. Part of the strategy, as I understand it, and what I'm working with the police department on is, the end goal here is Building 3 obviously was planned to be done at some date uncertain. We do have an opportunity to address a short-term, and I say short-term, a 5-year or less space need for the police department, provides them significant additional space in Building B, which would also have an adapted request for some hardening, and then which you'll also see in the budget, and something I'd like to fund through the public safety allocation if the millage remains the same as the fire trucks, the SWAT team resource, and then additionally there's some money required for a true space needs analysis that we can start casting a vision, developing a plan in terms of what it's going to look like for space needs architecture design for our growing and future police department. And so that's all part of a moving part strategy to get our police in a modern, functional, adapted, safe building space. So my goal was to continue on this plan of the third floor build out, so we can in fact move some departments out of B, give police the expansion space they desperately need, while we create a vision with the council and the community on a permanent home for the police department. So if I'm not tracking properly and this is not a direction, it would be good to know that before I start building those space needs and transitions into the budget.
Okay, I'll start with Councilman Johnson since he's not here, and then I'll follow up with Councilman Hammer. Councilman Johnson?
Mayor, thank you, sir. So my question, I guess this can be sent to me in an email. The 1.8 million, how was that eaten up? I know the enterprise fund is what covered it, but I remember the whole process from the ARPA funding to where we are now. But that's a huge chunk of change, to say the least. So what was it just change orders that added up to be 1.8? I'm trying to recall everything from where we were then to now. And I'm not expecting y'all to have those numbers right in front of you right now, but that's something I would definitely love to know, because we're making these estimates, and it seems that these estimates are never really on the ball, at least previously. So I have a hard time moving forward with another portion of Building E when we keep underestimating, or whatever the case may be, with what we already have right now. So that's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you. Can you answer that today?
Yeah, the exact figures I'd have to send further in an email, but I think it's an excellent question, and we can absolutely dive into it. Here's the one thing that I can say with confidence right now is This $18.4 million is a figure that Larry and I worked on a giant spreadsheet for a lot of time. And Greg was involved as well. And Greg and I and Larry all worked together at the county on all the Parks referendum projects. And I think our philosophy is the same. You put that contingency high. And we estimated a very high contingency for this project, and $18.4 million represents a high contingency for construction. I feel pretty confident that we're gonna come in under it. For example, the furniture is gonna come back to you at your next council meeting. And, you know, we've expanded the memo and explanation. I listened to the meeting to answer all your questions, and one of the things you're gonna see in there is our furniture expenditures are $200,000 less than our budget, because we estimated that budget high. I can't speak with confidence about how high the contingency was planned back in 2022 and 2023. There are a lot of change orders on this project. We have made a lot of changes. And if you think about the management changes that have happened in that time, not just city manager, but, you know, even, you know, our building official has changed, our utilities director has changed. We've had the people who are making the decisions about what goes in the building have changed over time. So there have been certainly a lot of owner-driven changes that we have to own as a city. But I can definitely get those details to you all next week.
Okay, thank you. So, Councilman Hammond?
This being something new for parks and facilities, couldn't we utilize those impact fee funding that we need to spend on this?
No, it's not. It wouldn't be a regional. Wouldn't qualify as a regional expense for the purpose of the impact fee. So this is existing. It's already under construction. It's existing. It's not new capacity. And at this point, if that question could have been asked, it would have been 3 years ago.
Because originally we agreed not to build it out, so it would be empty. So this would actually be something new, because we did not intend on building it, so it's empty. Right. So it is not budgeted to build that out. This is a new budget item.
Right, but the capacity's there, the space is there, yeah.
Okay.
So my question's gonna be more towards Councilman Johnson's discussion. How accurate is the 1.5? Because we're talking about the ARPA interest was 1.7, and you're estimating the build out with the furniture, with the design, to be 1.5. How accurate is that number? And you know, it begs to differ if you put 1.5 and you build in these contingencies. And if we go over, that's inexcusable, right? So I want to give direction. I want to give a consensus. But the question still remains, how accurate is the 1.5?
Did we bring the engineer's estimate and the meeting requirements tonight? If not, we'll bring it back.
So we actually, opportune timing, met on Building E this morning as a team with staff. And, you know, these are, the design estimate we're pretty confident on. The furniture estimate we're pretty confident on. The third floor build out is a estimate. It is not an engineer's, none of these are engineer's estimates. They can't be. With the 30 days that we've had to develop it, the only reason we're comfortable with the design estimate is because we actually have a task order from an architect. So we have a hard number in front of us. The other figure, and I'd have to defer to Greg on this one, is an estimate based on the current build out of the second floor and the approximate space needs.
Okay.
But it's done by our internal staff, not by engineers.
Okay. Go ahead. And Deputy Mayor Jaffe has a question as well. But I'm more along the lines of this is going to open up space. I just want to see how accurate we're getting to that 1.5.
Well, actually, 3 of us worked on the estimate of the 1.2 for the 3-story build out. We feel that's a pretty accurate number based on the existing third floor. If you haven't been up there lately, you know, it's going to consist of building offices mostly because the fire suppression system's in, except for the offices, you know, the the HVAC, you know, we have to build the restrooms, but between using RS means and using costs based on what we did to build out on the second floor, we feel fairly comfortable. Granted, we don't have a set of construction plans yet. We have Greg Zark, architect, that we just received an updated task order from him, and once we get, you know, the 30%, 60% plans, but we feel fairly comfortable with this number based on what we've spent on the first floor and the second floor.
Well, Sergeant Major, you've been counting nuts and bolts for quite some time, and I feel a little more at ease with your estimates, or you going on the record and sharing that with me.
Yes,
I know
sir.
you've worked many years counting the nuts and bolts in the community centers throughout the county, so thank you for that. I appreciate it. I think, I'm not sure if Deputy Mayor has a question for you.
How many square feet is that third floor trying to build out?
The actual third floor is going to over 13,000 square feet, but the actual build out is about 10,300. And the reason is, you know, all the mechanical units are up on the third floor, but actual build out is about 10,000, a little over 10,300 square feet.
How come? It's my understanding. I walked the building. I know the MEPs are all in. I know the drops or the ductwork aren't in for the individual offices, but like the main trunk lines.
Stock drywall.
Yeah, stock drywall, correct.
Yes,
Why? And I know a lot of it's going to mirror the second floor. Why not just use the architect that designed the building originally? Why hire Greg Sark to draw the tenant build out? To me, it's you just kind of copy paste, overlay the CAD drawing on the third floor. I was told it was going to mirror the second floor when I walked the building months ago. So just curious why.
If it would be all right, I'll address that.
Yeah.
Silling Architects was selected through a competitive qualification process in 2021. This was the first government building they had done in Florida. We've had some challenges, mainly related to their subconsultants, which wouldn't really impact us here. It was primarily site work subconsultants that greatly delayed this project moving forward. They're well aware of that. There's nothing I'm saying here tonight that they haven't heard us say before. We actually considered looking at this as a design build with W&J. And in fact, we first approached W&J to give us a very, very rough figure about 1.5 years ago when we were awarding this contract. And that was one of their suggestions was, hey, why not partner with us and just let us bring on a design build firm and we'll do the whole thing, right? Some challenges with that, the procurement process challenges that George could speak more to, but also when you do design build, you lose a little bit of nobody's actually on your side, right? The designer and the engineer are on a team and no one's on the owner's side. And Sark Engineering is who they would have partnered with anyway, who's already on our continuing contract. Steve Whitten and Greg received the estimate from Sark and it's very low, and it's because the MEP is essentially done, right? So he's gonna be able to, and we did confirm we were able to get the DWG drawings from Silling. We own the drawings. So that was part of the consideration is cost savings, time savings, using a local firm and partnering with W&J to expedite the project.
But did not get a price from Ceiling Architect?
No, we didn't, and I think George could correct me on this. I don't believe we can because it's in our CCNA, Consultants Competitive Negotiation Act. You can't get prices from 2 engineering firms at the same time. You have to negotiate with one, terminate negotiations if you can't come to an agreement, and then negotiate with another.
But it wouldn't be considered like a change order or task change to the contract by them just designing the third floor out?
He's on your other side. Come
Oh,
on up.
hey, George.
George, come on up.
behind me. Yeah, you want to
Come
come
on
up and
up,
talk
George.
about what your thoughts are on that?
Yeah, so a lot went into the decision, but Basically what Julia outlined, it was more performative for Sealing. And the cleanest way, based on a collaborative approach, was to utilize SARC, which is obviously a firm that WJ utilizes. Obviously keeping WJ because they're mobilized already there, so not having another contractor come in. But then also doing it under the continuing consulting contract that we have, which SARC is a part of. To your point, we could have gone to Sealing maybe with a change order, but again, based on some performance issues and going a different direction, the cleanest approach would have been what we're proposing now is to go with SARC, who's under contract, get a proposal from them, and then have WJ, who's already mobilized, to do it.
By the time we get the drawings done and the permit, will we have CO and they'll be out of the building, or are you expecting WJ to still be on the job site?
So the preliminary, the task order that we have now has 90 days until, I believe, 100% drawings. I think 80, 90 days, somewhere around there. So they should still be on site.
Any other questions, Deputy Mayor? Thank you. So in moving forward, I'm good. I would be good with filling this out. We've got the police department on top of one another. We were looking at short-term improvements. Might as well just have them move and take over Building B and replace everyone to include, even the city attorney would have to move up to Building E, I would imagine. No?
I don't think so. I think that wasn't part of the plan.
Not in the first phase. No, this is
Okay.
the half.
She wants to
of
stay,
Building
I
B.
see.
Yes.
Okay.
This is half of Building E.
Okay.
B. Excuse me.
Bravo.
Bravo.
So I'm good with that, Councilman Langevin.
Yeah, you guys brought up some great questions and some great points. I agree with everything I heard. At the end of the day, we got to get some space for the police department. They're built out, and until we get them a new headquarters, that's going to be essential. So I support it, but to your point, Mayor, we just let them know that you gave us that estimate, so that's what we're letting you have to play with, and try to keep in that number.
Fixed price.
Yeah. I'm in agreement as long as it's to. So PD has extensions there, yeah.
Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, I mean, I think Greg did a great job with the TI budget. I feel like the design should be more around 35,000, but sake of what you guys discussed, I'm in approval of the 1.5 and then using the ARPA interest to fund the project.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, next.
Okay.
Carry on. Is that good enough?
That's fantastic. I won't backtrack. I was gonna say as an aside, that was the most interesting thing, just as an informational point, sorry to sidetrack the meeting, of the fire station P3 conversation is they deliver it for a fixed price, on time, on budget, right? Quick time lane, full project management. It's one of the most interesting things about these guys we were curious about, and they show the savings in that process where it doesn't take them years to build a building. But I won't digress on that tonight, but we will report back. I apologize, Larry.
Well, I've got a question by Councilman here.
I have one more before we move on to the new thing. Earlier, we were talking about the 3 payments on the ladder trucks. Yes. With us doing this, that locks in that price now, correct?
Correct.
So there's no price increases throughout the time. This locks us in at that price now and everything else. That sounds like a win-win.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Are we good? Okay. The next that we want to discuss is the PD transitional housing, moving over to Building B. Currently, the plan is for the city attorney and actually human resources to stay in Building B. Right now, there is a scope of work that has been given to an architect to start, designing and trying figuring out the hardening of the facility. Plans being developed to provide the cost estimate. The early guesstimates, and that was actually Jessica actually covered this once before. The high end is $220,000 right now. It is as possible to go as low as, I believe it was $150,000.
I do want to stress this is an estimate, and we do not have final figures. We've done some rough work, but that would be what we're thinking the number is. The first estimate we saw was 400 and change, but we're refining it with more confidence, so I don't want to speak that is a number in light of the conversation we just had. we will bring that number back, but the current order of magnitude is $250,000.
The swag.
They're gonna use the existing furniture, rooms. I mean, they're really gracious, and the PD is in terms of grateful to have the space, adapt, and these are some basic safety and security upgrades. There might be a few minor modifications once they get in there. They say, wait a minute, this particular door or desk or whatever doesn't work, or they need additional space, but they've been very modest in their requests.
Carry on.
Okay. Next part that came up was actually parks plans and actually doing a master plan for Fred Poppy Park. We're looking at the utilizing impact fees to pay for the plan. That's currently being discussed right now. Something that did come up was as far as the road repairs at the park, to make sure that we do not repair the roads and tear up before we have a complete plan. And I have been guaranteed, and it says right there, roads will be done in conjunction with other improvements to the park to ensure efficiency.
Football fields, baseball fields.
Yeah. Okay. Another item that was discussed was the Veterans Service Officer, VSO, to increase it by 1. The 2025 expense that we have right now from Brevard County, because we have an MOU with Brevard County, is $85,884. The HR director did some work up on trying to figure out if we brought in a new body and make it a city employee, the cost would be just under $89,000. However, what we should probably do, and this is just a recommendation, is that we should investigate with Brevard County and see if we can actually increase the MOU to increase it to 2 bodies. And one thing that I, of course, thought of is the person that we currently have right now falls under the Florida retirement system.
Correct.
If we brought it in as a city employee, that other one would not fall under the FRS system. So it'd be kind of interesting. So we're gonna, if you want to go in that direction, we'll discuss with the county.
I think that infrastructure is already in place, and they go through the training at the same time as the county. And when I suggested this from the offset, and I know that Councilman Johnson wanted to look at the numbers, the numbers weren't. We're providing services not only to conveyors, but through the cities roundabout. This is such a necessity with the money that comes back to our economy, service-connected veterans, and quite frankly, Brevard County has the 3rd highest in the state of Florida of service-connected veterans, just so that you know. Service-connected disabled veterans in Brevard County are the 3rd highest in the state. So make up a huge amount. And so there are many of our veterans that do need the expertise, and even moreover, our surviving spouses and spouses. It's an important service to our community. So I requested this, council. It's up to you, but I'm a thumbs up on this. I think this is something that we owe to our veterans and their families.
Okay, keep going, please.
And there was additional space that would have to be allocated down in the department for a minimal cost. Okay, let's move on to cost allocation. The question came up, and it was actually discussed earlier tonight, as far as cost allocation and how the general fund gets its money back from enterprise funds. What we do is, on an annual basis, we submit documentation to a vendor to show all of the expenses and all of the activities within the city, i.e., we have them look at procurement transactions, financial transactions, bids, contracts, IT, HR updates, facility work orders. They look at all that and tag dollar amounts to all of that. And then they proportion it out by the enterprise funds and the general fund. Down at the very bottom, if you would look, in 2026, we're actually receiving back $4.9 million back from enterprise funds back to the general fund. Now, the numbers that are used, of course, are 1 year old. You're always 1 year behind by using those estimates, but that's the best way to come up with those numbers. Actuals from the previous year. Okay. Keep one at a time. Zero-based budgeting. This has come up multiple times, and I would like to say, Mayor and Councilman Johnson, back when I first came here, I had a discussion about, we've talked about zero-based budgeting since I've been here. And the conversation has been that I was actually planning on doing a 5-and-1 rotation. 5 years of what we do right now, you know, maximization, and then do a zero-based budget. Bring us back down where we actually have to sit and show how we're gonna budget the money. And then every 6 years, you keep doing that. I actually addressed that with our bonding agencies, and they actually thought that was a great idea because it keeps bringing you back down, and they said that actually helps with our bonding or our rating. So just to put that out there. So we would actually be looking at, in 2028 would be the first time that we actually do zero-based budgeting again. One time, and then we go back to what we do now. That's the thought process, anyway. An operational audit. You know, it keeps coming up, talking about operational audits within the city, and we actually are continually doing this. We bring on a organization called 65 North that comes in. We select, as an organization, different things that we would like for them to look at. And currently, and actually they just finished quite recently on doing a couple of items for us. We have still available $16,000 within that contract to address other issues. And what we would like to do is actually move forward and look at it to do a fleet operational audit. Look at that and do an in-depth dive within the fleet organization.
I recently had a conversation with our clerk of courts, Brevard County Clerk of Courts, and as you know, they do audits for Brevard County. And it appears to me, she said she would be willing to help us out with any operational audits as she does with the county. Now, I just would like to see if council would entertain that. Have our county manager discuss what is possible, because I think if another county or another auditing agency would do the same as they audit the sheriff's department, they audit other county agencies, just inquire if they would, what would it take for them to do that with us? Now, I would like to see what council's take would be on this, and I don't know what the parameters would be regarding the audit, but I think that discussion should ensue with our city manager and perhaps our city clerk, our Brevard County Clerk of Courts. Yes, sir. What do you, well, first of all, council.
Sure, I'll start. I mean, we have I like all of our constitutional officers. We've got a phenomenal batch of leadership here in Brevard County, and I don't think it hurts as long as there's no, legal whatever. It doesn't hurt to have somebody else that's an expert in that knows what they're doing, to have an outside perspective. It's not really it's not really like, oh, we don't trust. It's just, hey, we have a different set of eyes. Maybe they do things a little differently. We can learn new things. So I'm for it.
Councilman Hamm?
I'm never against free help, so that's always. I always look at a situation if somebody's willing to help, and they have good morals and they have they're looking and helping for good. I'm always for that. On the backside of that, I do think we do have a new city manager now that is diving deep into things. And I think we're going to get a lot of good feedback from that, but I will never say no to free help with things.
Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, I mean, to Councilman Langman's point, I think we have some phenomenal constitutional officers, but I prefer that we use an independent third party and not have Brevard County muddle in our business, so to speak. I think they have enough of their own problems, and they should focus on that.
Copy that. Councilman Johnson?
I would prefer we had somebody either outside, like outside of the county, or we do a RFI or RFP for possible consultants for the operational audit. Mayor, this is something you wanted 5 years ago, I remember, but initially the term was forensic audit, but that wasn't the audit we wanted to do. But after learning the operational audit and what all it would entail, we've been full go for it. We should have had it last year in regards to the charter officer, but it didn't work out. So I would prefer we had outside of the county consultant or person to take this on.
Yeah, I don't know what that looks like. I think operationally, and to your point, the conversation between Ms. Sadoff and myself was surrounding that type of forensic audit. I call it like an IG inspection, and I think folks that have served in the military understand that term. At that same point, I think I got 3 folks that would say, Mr. Manager, Mr. Morton, go ahead and have that conversation. I don't know what that looks like, but certainly see what that would entail, and then maybe just come back and report back to council.
I will do that, and then they also provided us, for lack of a better term of art, an operational risk assessment where they show difficulty, reward, risk of challenges and problems, opportunities to correct, cost barriers, low to high, and they rate it on a scale. It's very comprehensive. I'm going to go ahead and forward that to council as well, so you have the same information we do on what they believe this very credible national third-party outside agency believes it should be our pathway towards accomplishing this goal.
Okay.
I've got the last one. We heard the question from several in respects to CDLs, recruiting, changing, how we move forward with the program. Do we change the PDQs, the job descriptions, so that heavy equipment operators don't have to have CDLs? Do we contract for transport? This is one of those ones we are looking in, we are talking, we're ideating. I don't have specific follow-up information. We just didn't get a complete enough report on this one to bring back tonight. Haven't lost sight of it, and we'll continue to work on it. And with that, we have, unless there's questions, we have one last part of the presentation. And I will say we were smart enough to bring in a Marine Corps veteran to be the closer, to be the back cleanup for us tonight. So I'm glad to turn it over to Mr. Spillers here to did a phenomenal job in concert on his own and working with our agencies, PD and Public Works and Fire, I believe, right, and put together a really great conversation around leases. And this is the last piece of our presentation tonight. Thanks for long suffering with us on this.
All right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Sean Spillers, and I am your Capital and Asset Program Administrator. I went ahead and put together a least cost and benefit analysis. What I'd like everyone to do is I'd like them to look at this as a holistic view. There's not just the monetary costs and benefits, but there's also the indirect costs and benefits to this. I've tried to show the good and the bad and everything so that you can make the best decision for the city. So first, the acquisition costs. As you can see from this, the lease vehicle does look good because it's just all in the contract. We don't have anything to purchase. Another thing is that a lot of our vehicles we get, especially for PD, is we buy them from Duval Ford in Jacksonville, and then we have to send them down to Fort Pierce to get outfitted. Usually there's a little bit of an increase on it to get it done. Mostly I put in a 20% for added upfitting. There is some benefits to that. We get 1 extra year of warranty on it, and they'll send somebody out to the city to work on the car if something goes wrong. So that's the added benefit of that. All right, so the average life for the leased vehicle would be on a 2-year cycle. Our city-owned vehicles is a 7-year cycle. Sorry, I guess there's an echo.
I'm going to take it from you.
Yeah. Hello? Oh, okay. Okay, so for the leased vehicle, it's on a 2-year cycle. For the city-owned vehicles, it's on a 7-year cycle. With the leased vehicles, you get 2 backups. With the city-owned, we don't have any backups right now. The vehicle turnover is between 2 and 4 months. City-owned vehicles between 4 and 6 months. The turnover cost for the leased vehicles is added mileage and repairs, so they give us a certain cap in mileage that we can meet. If we go above it, it's extra charges. A lot of their contract doesn't include major repairs, so we would have to cover major repairs, but any type of surplus costs or anything, any upfitting would be included. I do have to add the caveat that these numbers I got were from Citicorp with the City of Orlando. Things can change with our contracts, what we do. This is just a general overview. All right, yearly maintenance and repairs with the leased vehicles without accidents, it would be 0. They do their own maintenance on there. Again, this could change because the City of Orlando has vendors in Orlando. They might not be able to come out here, but it's just, I'm using their example. For our city-owned vehicle, it was $321 for my example vehicle 9099. The yearly insurance cost is $235, and the yearly contract for the leased vehicle is $8,180 per vehicle. Again, with the reoccurring costs, I added the added mileage and repairs, and then with the city-owned vehicle, the turnover is included in the auction, so we don't even really see it. All right, so this would be if we did our whole patrol fleet of 150 vehicles. The monthly contract cost would be an average of $102,300, and with the city-owned vehicles, it would be about $114,000. And that would be if we were saving the money up to get new vehicles as opposed to just paying them outright every once in a while. All right, so this is the replacement cycle. We have a cycle here of 7 years. You can see the leased fleet versus the owned fleet. There is a savings of about $100,000 to $200,000 per year, but I also like to add in things that a lot of people don't think about, that if we have our own fleet, we have surplus revenue as well, because we'll be getting rid of about 20 to 25 patrol vehicles per year. And so our net savings will be from $99,000 to $118,000, and that's just inputting 3% a year for inflation. All right, so our lease option plan is to start, if it's approved, to start with 3 to 5 vehicles, because we want to see how it actually plays out, because what we see on paper might not be what we get, and we want to be able to try it out and see, is this a viable option? We would replace the fleet gradually. We have approximately 40 patrol vehicles that are ready for replacements right now. The newer patrol vehicles, this is what would be unfortunate, is that we have a lot of 2022s and a lot of 2023s that just got replaced. So we'd have to wait another 5 or 7 years to be able to replace those. We're looking to replace 20 to 25 vehicles per year, and any additional leases above replacements will be acquired for departmental growth. So the 20 to 25 will be the replacements, then we'll add some more if we add some more positions. This is the purchasing option plan. If approved, we would like to establish a sinking fund for patrol vehicle replacements. Now, what we would like to get eventually is to be able to have that invested so that the interest will be able to buy some of the vehicles and we can actually keep that fund up. Now, that would take some time, but we want to start somewhere by putting a little bit aside now if this option is approved. Again, replacing 20 to 25 patrol vehicles per year. Add additional patrol vehicles to support departmental growth. And this, I think, is a very important one and is very needed here, is to establish backup vehicles for officers who have vehicles getting major repairs or a total vehicle awaiting replacement.
Comment?
Yes, sir.
And so the fleet sinking fund for PD is something I'm used to. It's something I asked to be put into the budget and fund this year. Actually acts as sort of a self-insurance plan in the hopes that we don't need it. And as a couple of years go on of us not needing it, we build up enough balance that we can be more flexible in our replacements, as Mr. Spillers noted, with the ultimate goal of building up enough reserve balance that we even out the years when we have opportunities, we save in the years when we don't, or we don't need as many replacements, and ultimately the interest builds to a point where we can replace a vehicle or 2 a year based off fund growth instead of general fund. And so I had asked Sean to put in there to propose establishment of a sinking fund this year for the police department. Think of it as self-insurance in a way.
Yes, sir. All right, no problem.
If we could pause on each.
Okay,
yeah, if
okay.
you don't mind, Mayor.
Okay, do you have a question?
So City of Orlando currently leases their entire fleet?
No, they don't lease their entire fleet. They use only a little bit for their patrol fleet. I think they have about 800 vehicles, it said in their presentation, and they utilize a little bit over 150. Yeah.
And then what are the mileage, what's the mileage annually or for the total lease?
The
I
threshold,
can-
yeah. What's the threshold?
I can get that for you. It didn't specifically say in their presentation that they gave me, but I'll be able to get that to you.
Because it almost makes sense to try it with the SRO. They don't drive a lot, right? I mean,
Yeah. I know that with some of the high mileage or the low mileage vehicles, it might not be good. That's why I put the patrol vehicles on here, because those are the high mileage vehicles that we would need to get new ones every couple years. I know that from the heavy equipment leases, that the hours that they have, they were given. They're like 1,350 for the motor graders and 3,000 for the excavators. Now, I can tell you, we've had some stuff for a long time, and we haven't hit those hours yet. So, and that's just for a 2 to 4 year cycle. So usually the mileages are pretty good. Even if it's like 5,000 a year or something like that, I know some officers will be able to meet that. Like some other ones, maybe not. Some go up, some go down. Maybe Chief Agello would be able to talk on that a little bit.
yeah, that's pretty low.
Yeah, I think that's low, but we made some baseline assumptions going into this analysis. I'll share them in case you think our thinking was off or you want us to go in a new direction. But first assumption that we made was low mileage vehicles or specialty upfit vehicles probably weren't a great candidate for lease opportunity. One, because a really low mileage vehicle is going to have a longer service life if we're rating it in terms of actual use and wear and tear and service. Specialty vehicles with the cost of specialty upfitting, let's say it's a command or a battalion vehicle in terms of fire, again, it's going to have a lower mileage use, predictably, possibly, and then the cost of that upfitting and the cost of the vehicle is generally a higher. So we have a higher long-term value of that vehicle. Similarly, with bigger assets like a fire engine, when we look at the numbers, the delta on the return, they do lease fire engines, and the cost, it makes no sense not to have value left in the asset. And then the same sort of paradigm emerged in public works. If they're high dollar but long term, that to someone's point, the hours is what matters, not the length of years we've owned it, may not be a good candidate. Sean's going to dive into that. I don't want to get ahead of his presentation, but that was sort of the starting point we used. That okay, what makes the most sense? And then in that light, we reached out to Orlando. We reached out to a few vehicle leasing companies, I think 3, and some other vehicle users. I think the city of Coconut Grove is doing some leasing. And we really found 2 categories. Cities that have enough money, they've rotated this in as part of a forced replacement maintenance off their books, all these wonderful things. And then we've seen cities that are cash strapped, and that was the last assumption we made. I think if you're a significantly cash strapped entity in an interim period expecting a rise in revenue, leasing makes a lot more sense. If you're a cash strapped entity with not a great outlook on your finances, leasing becomes less of an attractive option, because then we're locking into a lease rotation and we're losing, as Sean's going to show you, we're losing the fixed cost of the asset depending on the length of, and the ability to extend the life of the asset if we need to, if we're broken a year and we just don't have the money. But again, just high level assumptions. I'd like to let Sean finish his presentation.
Just real quick, I guess,
Yeah.
to that point about like Coconut Grove's a very small
Right.
city, like City of Orlando is really, so like it may not make the best sense. Like we're huge, right? We have a ton of roads, so these guys are driving a lot. So I'm just curious what like that mileage threshold.
Yeah, and that's where we reached out to several entities, and we're still getting a lot of that mileage data back, but we're giving you the best info we've got. And what maybe to our point and your point is, we can guess because the costs appear to be so similar, it's probably worth investigating in an actual in-place program and seeing what our experiential relevance winds up being. But anyway, thank you.
Does that conclude your questions? Councilman Hammer and then Councilman Lange.
So my question on this is, it says additional capital outfitting. So you're telling me the company that we lease from pays for the light package, pays for the...
Yes,
pays for everything.
it is an option. The only thing that I seen from Orlando that they charged extra for was to put like the big cranes on the front of the trucks to pull people out of ditches and stuff like that. They didn't have that on hand, but all the light bars, things like that, we can have that. It is an option.
So it's an extra cost?
No, it wouldn't be an extra cost. It would be included in the contract.
Okay, because from what I'm seeing with, I'm sorry, I'm really loud. So from when I was in Fleet, we pay about $314 per every maintenance stop that we have, and that's including man hours, everything else. Are you saying that the whole time that we have them, we don't pay for any kind of maintenance whatsoever?
No type of maintenance. The only thing that they did say was any major repairs had to get covered by us.
And that's repairs that are not under warranty?
I'm guessing what are negligent.
Okay. Because we're looking at $680 a month per car, basically.
Yeah.
And, I mean, that just, I mean, as long as all the electric package, the wall for the back, everything, all that's included in that.
And those are all options, but like I said, I'm just going off of what City Corp has with the City of Orlando. Of course, our contract may differ.
Yeah, because I know when we buy the cars, we actually have to buy the cars alone from somebody. They don't outfit them. And I thought we did them in-house, whether they do something different now. But we used to do them in-house, and we actually got all the lights, everything else on an actual bid through, I think, Morganelli. But we got all those at a lower price. So I just want to make sure that those lights, the badging, we did in-house. We used to do too, so.
And we like to look at it, and that's why I was saying the holistic look, because when we have to build all of these vehicles ourselves, that takes away Fleet from doing maintenance on police vehicles, fire vehicles, and the rest of the city. So if they're spending their time building 40 police vehicles, we feel it's a better allocation of money to have someone else outfit it and deliver to us ready to go.
Okay. Yeah, just when we go through there, I would definitely double check the lights, the Jotto desk, everything is all included.
Got it. Yes, sir.
Councilman Langevin?
Yeah, so you started to kind of answer what my question was going to be, which was going to be, what happens if we crash one of their leased vehicles? And then, so I'm assuming we're going to have to pay for it. And then is it going to be like at the full price, or is it going to be at some lesser price based off how long we've had it or mileage? How does that work?
And I think this is a big part of what I will go over later is the risk of it, because most likely they'll send us to a third-party vendor, and that vendor could charge us basically whatever they wanted. Whereas if we were doing it in-house, it would be our people doing it. And that's why I say that there's always risks and benefits to each way we go, and I'm trying to outline that as we go through. But I have some indirect benefits and indirect costs that are coming up as well.
And just a touch point too, the work that the team did was using examples in the world. We have not obviously negotiated a contract. We didn't have authorization or felt it was opportunity. So when we say maybe sample it, it's you guys saying, let's go negotiate a contract and look. But we didn't want to spend that time, obviously. We didn't have the time yet until we get a general sense when you see the totality of the presentation, if you even think it's worth the trouble. So some of the details we just don't know yet.
All right. Councilman Johnson, any questions?
Yes, Mayor. Only question: how many police vehicles have we had that are totaled or have been totaled within the past 2 years or so?
For this year alone, it's been 3. I would have to look at last year, but I believe it's usually always under 10 from what I remember.
The chief wants to answer, he might know.
Based on Florida numbers.
Say that again, Councilman Johnson. We lost him?
I don't know if he can hear us, but
So he'll be coming back.
we didn't build an average. That's a question I can't answer. We can't answer tonight. We looked into the last 12 months to see there was 3 that were totaled. I know there's been others in the past, but we didn't build a case study on what our average loss is, or can we determine, because 1 year a trend does not make. So I don't know that.
But I mean, if a vehicle needs to be replaced, whether it's leased or owned, you still have to replace it, so.
Yeah, I think I'm more on the purchasing option plan. I like the purchase option plan myself. I don't think we have enough intel and experience with leasing. That's where I stand. Perhaps this time next year, you'll have additional intel where we can make a sound judgment on experimenting. That this is my take, that we could go down that lane and see and try it. But at this point, I'm not comfortable trying to go and mix and match right now. I would, that's where I'm at right now.
Question to that, in a fleet audit, would that consultant be able to provide this kind of data? Do they have that kind of experience?
So that wasn't going to be the purpose of our fleet audit. It was just going to be operations particularly focused around gas usage and where the gasoline goes, making sure gas goes to assigned vehicles, making sure usage seems to line up with reality. On top of that, we've got a whole host of things that don't have asset numbers probably, like chainsaws, weed whackers, lawnmowers. So it was more getting our hands around how do we ensure that the gas being dispensed is matching up with actual use, and we're tracking every gallon matched to every gallon of usage. I will say that the incoming Public Works Director has an extensive background in working on fleet as a holistic enterprise, including interfacing directly with public safety, fire, and police. And so I think that's a question that he's going to be able to help us get much further on than where we are currently.
Thank you. Carrying on with your presentation, did you need anything from us at this point?
No, and I'm sorry if I misled. The idea was if we decide to go, once you get through the presentation, it would be a next year's budget cycle, not this year. And we're sort of giving you a high level, hey, even if we do it and we find out the pieces start to align, we would still recommend an incremental approach just to test the assumptions and make sure it's reality. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Carry on, Maureen.
Thank you, sir. All right, we went over that. All right, so next is the heavy equipment lease. This one was a little bit, This one was a little bit on the fence. It's kind of expensive. What is usually it's used for is for if we have a project that we need extra equipment for a short period of time, we can rent that equipment. For a long-term strategy, it's not really great, but I'll go over the numbers real quick. This is what we would do. It would be a municipal lease from John Deere through Dobbs. Now, the agreement that I looked at was from Lake County. So basically, our lease equipment would have a base cost of $0 if we leased it because it would be on the contract. If we bought it in the future, it's going to be around $300,000. Same with the excavator, about around the same amount. The average life for the leased equipment, you can do a 2-year or a 4-year. A 4-year is much cheaper, but usually we have a cycle of about 8 years on the heavy equipment. The turnover cost, like I said before, added hours and negligent repairs would be under them, and we do have to pay a maintenance cost every 500 hours. So it's like, I believe, $1,500 every 500 hours on it. But like I said, we've had vehicle or heavy equipment for years, and we're still under about 3,000 hours. So the added hours, I believe, for the motor grader was 1,450, and it was 3,000 for the excavator. And for the turnover cost for the city-owned vehicle, it would just be included in the auction. I plugged in a salvage value, just an average of what we've sold things for, but I would like to note as well that the things that we sell is a lot older than 8 years usually. All right, so this is the savings for, I'm sorry, sir. Oh, yes.
We heard what you guys said.
Yeah, so basically what we would like to do is we would like to establish a replacement program based on hours or mileage instead of years in service. Now, we would need a little bit of software. Hopefully our new ERP system will be able to do this, and then use a depreciation by unit cycle to establish when a vehicle or piece of equipment needs to be replaced. We think that that would be a lot more efficient than actually doing an amount of time. Because as you were saying earlier, I've seen vehicles personally when they were getting surplus that were being driven by the patrol officers that were 2008s that had less than 100,000 miles. And then I've seen some that had 180,000 miles. So it just varies depending on the officer, what they're doing. So here, go ahead.
So I believe our fleet software faster actually would accommodate that. Yeah, I figured I saw what you were chuckling at. But yeah, so we do have a fleet software in place that accommodate that. We've just not activated or used the module. So that's something we're looking into. Thank you.
All right, so this is the leased equipment. I used the cheapest contract, the 48 months. And as you can see, there's not really much savings on there. There's no savings at all. And then I also put in the surplus revenue. But there is some indirect benefits from it, which are going to be coming up as well. And this is the excavator. This one was really bad. I mean, this one was not very economical. As you can see, it would be $264,000 in the hole for 8 years. All right, so this is the indirect lease benefits. So this is what I like to add. These are all the people that are involved from acquiring the equipment or the vehicles all the way to them getting surplused. Now, if we go through with a lease, we save a lot on man hours. Some of these people will be included, but it won't be nearly as big of an impact as if we were actually purchasing the vehicles. So that is the indirect lease benefits. One thing I like to always add is something that we have fixed at the city is when we used to surplus stuff, I would follow a pallet, and it would take a couple people a couple hours to palletize the stuff. We'd sell the pallets and we'd get 15 cents per pallet. So I like to look at the man hours as well. What is the cost? Like the city manager says, you don't want to spend $1 for a dime. So that's all what I like to add as well. The indirect owning benefits, there's a lot less risk, and we get revenue from surplus. Risks of owning versus leasing. Owning, rising acquisition costs, rising surplus costs, slower turnover time, no extra vehicles on hand. It's manpower heavy. You have a higher fleet life, and you have higher maintenance costs. Leasing risks, we don't own the fleet. So imagine if we had 150 vehicles that were owned by a vendor, we would be dependent on that vendor. So they could pretty much name their price after we had it because we can't afford to buy 150 police vehicles all at once. The next is contract issues, differences between City of Orlando, between Lake County with us. They might not have any vendors in our area to do maintenance. We'd have to take it to Orlando. That would be a little bit more cost, a little bit more time, man hours. The added fees, of course, going over the mileage, going over the hours, if we'd had any major repairs. And then also, I like to add this one in here because I've seen this before, risk of vendor bankruptcy where they have to sell their assets. And if we don't have the money to buy the assets from them, then we lost out of our entire fleet. All right, there are some other alternative options. We have our interdepartmental leases, public works, utilities, going in between, borrowing vehicles, leasing vehicles. Next is city-to-city leases. That's an option. County-to-city leases is what one of our employees mentioned to me that might be viable. The last time we have done this, though, they required that their driver came, so we had to pay for their driver as well. Yeah, their operator. Leasing for specialized equipment when needed is an option. Like I said, if we're doing any special projects that are short-term, it might be a better option to go with a lease than to go with purchasing the equipment for a long period of time. And then also renting equipment is a good one. The possible issues with alternative leases, availability of equipment. I've seen this personally when I was doing inventory with utilities. Something went down, we had to call somebody. They had to go all the way to Tampa to get the equipment because there was none around here. And you guys factor in the man hours. If the equipment goes down at 5 p.m., they got to go out. The next one is it's labor heavy. Ownership complications, like basically liability, who pays for what, who does this. Another big, huge one that a lot of people don't take into account is the maintenance compatibility. All of our vehicles that we have in our equipment, we have stuff in our storeroom. So if it goes down, if we need to do maintenance, if it breaks, if we go, say, with John Deere and we don't have any John Deere parts, then we have to fill our storeroom with John Deere parts so that we're able to actually fix the stuff if we need to, if it's not included in the contract. And then the last one I wanted to mention is the risk of cross-contamination. And here's the Florida statutes and Florida admin codes that follow that. Questions?
Councilor, any questions? Deputy
No, I
Mayor?
mean, really just a statement. I mean, I think you got everyone's staff just did an absolute phenomenal job getting prepared for tonight's meeting and just the presentation, and it's just, I know 2 city managers in one year and a majority new council. I know it's not easy, so I mean, kudos to every single one of you.
Councilman Hammer?
Have we thought about trying this in different departments? Say the building department that doesn't have a vehicle that is used so hazardously? Basically, for somebody that goes around and just checks meters, say a meter reader. I mean, wouldn't that be something that would be less likely to get into an accident and better able to keep clean, taken care of, see if it works?
So are you saying that as a leasing option? Usually, the way we look at it is because of the turnover with the 2 years, having low mileage vehicles, we can have them a lot longer. So we actually get our money's worth over the 7 or 10 years, depending on the mileage we get. Whereas with high mileage vehicles, those are the ones that get tore up really fast. And putting them on a 2-year cycle would be a lot better for our officers and for our citizens.
Well, the meter readers probably drive as much as of the police officers. They're driving around 8 hours a day.
So to answer your question directly, no, we didn't take it outside of the scope yet of public safety. Part of the reason was we didn't have time to expand the thinking. And the other part of the reason was the easiest to find and most readily available examples, for whatever reason, were generally focused around public safety. And so again, given the 30 days, that's the rabbit trail we ran down to just try to get a baseline of information. So it's an awesome question, and we'll probably continue to look into it, but we didn't do that work, sorry.
Yeah, it just scares me with emergency vehicles. I really hate testing on emergency vehicles because, that's, we got to count on that. We got to count on them being there. And I know our fleet's great. We usually have, 5 or 6 good backups, but I don't like testing on emergency vehicles.
Councilman Langevin?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So I also just want to say thank you guys, especially finance, phenomenal presentations tonight, and to all the staff over the past few meetings in particular. The presentations and the data have just been really good. So thank you guys very much for all the hard work that you put in. And what I want to say though is I really appreciate the creative thinking. That's like the direction that I wanted to go and why we brought on a new city manager. And so Mr. Morton and all the staff have come up with great ideas. This is the type of creative thinking that we'd love to see, just trying to bounce new ideas off and seeing if we can save money, if it makes sense, if the math makes sense, and not just, doing the old kind of standard way, because that's how we do things. So as far as leasing in general, I'm not opposed to learning more about it. And I definitely like the idea of the vehicles that we don't use very often. Looking into possible leases for those, for like the police and stuff. I wouldn't be opposed to, I think you had a proposal of like 3 to 5 vehicles just to see what the contract would look like, or kind of how that would play out. Again, I'm not opposed to learning more. So, but that's the main thing. I like to see these ideas and creative solutions coming forward.
Thank you. Councilman Johnson? Is he on? No comment?
His call keeps dropping.
Say again?
His calls keep dropping.
Oh, copy that. So I guess I'll, Mr. Morton, did you need further direction from council?
I do not. Thank you for listening, and thank you for the noticing how hard staff's been working. Really appreciate that.
Well, before we adjourn, I'll just say the following. To each and every staff member, you've navigated 5 different personalities up here with 5 different ideas, thoughts, challenges. You've also navigated 3 different city managers, and just to touch a little bit on what Deputy Mayor said, and our ship is sailing in a great direction. You've navigated each and every one of us what we see is important for our city and our passion. And you've withstood it all this evening. So thank you all for your participation. And I will not conclude without giving one of our most active citizens, Master Chief Batten, for being here each and every time. These are the type of individuals that truly care about our city, and I commend you, sir. Thank you so much. This meeting's adjourned.